All right, I have the cue from Hangouts that we are live on the air. What does everybody out there say? Are we live on the air? Are we going? Are we going? Looks like we're going from my end. Standing by. There we go. There's our cue. Starting in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 688, recorded on Wednesday, September 19th, 2018. Can we save the oceans with science? Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on the show, we are going to fill your heads with touchy sea otters, fear, and ignoble intent. But first...
Disclaimer. The world is big and complicated and full of noise, not just the buzzing, humming, tire screeching, siren squealing, clickety-clack type noises, but informational noise of all sorts. The news you read today, the conversations you had, the conversations you didn't have but overheard in passing, advertisements, road signs, the temperature of the air, thoughts you only half formed, how you look in the mirror, the feeling of your feet when putting on shoes, and how often it is you put on shoes compared to how infrequently you reflect on how nice it feels to take them off again. And at the center of all the complicated informational noise going on around you is your brain. And some of the noise is interesting. Some of it isn't. What's a brain to do? Well, wherever you are and whatever your brain happens to be doing, keep these few things in mind at all times. Anything can be interesting. If you ask the right question, every question has an answer, and every moment is an opportunity to ask the right question. And with that in mind, we bring you a few moments of people asking the right questions on a variety of interesting subjects here on This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back once again after the brilliant week that is behind us. We're here with more science, so many fun things once again. I have stories. What did I bring? I brought stories about, I've got some new Ignoble prizes.
Oh, this is like my favorite. I love it.
My favorite time of year, right? I've got Space, the Final Frontier. And we have an interview about ocean science and advocacy, which I'm very excited about in just a few moments. But before that, Justin, what do you have for us?
I've got a clue to an Alzheimer's cure, an elephant CSI story, and possibly, if we still have time towards the end of the show, a story about whether or not people can handle the truth.
Well, if it's anything, I don't remember what the name of the movie was, but apparently Tom Cruise. That's right. You can't handle the truth. That's like the only thing I remember from that movie. So let's find out.
Turns out probably you can, but I just gave away the whole story. So maybe
All right, Blair, what's up in the animal corner?
Oh my goodness. I brought some sea otters. I brought bees and wasps and climate change.
Of course you did. Chlamydia. Why not?
Sorry.
Sorry. All right, everyone. As we jump into the show, we know you're ready. If you are not already subscribed to the show, why not? Why have you not subscribed? It's so easy. You can go to TWIS.org to look for information, or you can find us in all the good places that podcasts are found. Search us on the internet. Look for This Week in Science, or like I said, TWIS, TWIS.org. But now it is time for our guest interview. Tonight, we are joined by Dr. Kathryn Matthews. Katie Matthews is Chief Deputy Scientist at Oceana. She trained as a coral biogeochemist and spent some time in the Arctic, but eventually she transitioned through the years into science policy. She worked as a AAAS Science and Technology Fellow for the U.S. Congress, then for the Office of Marine Conservation in the U.S. State Department. She also worked with the International Seafood Sustainability Foundation and with the Pew Charitable Trusts, and she ran a marine conservation and sustainable fisheries grant-making program. And now, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here, and don't worry, you're not going to say anything you regret during the interview.
We'll see.
We'll see about that. Just to get started, I'd love to find out more about you and your background. So, how you went from being a scientist and then getting interested in the more policy side of things.
Wasn't a plan. That's definitely for sure. So I went to school to be a geologist, and like the hiking boots and flannel shirts and all of that. And I graduated from college and discovered that you could go to graduate school, and that was a thing. And people would pay for you to do that and go, travel and do interesting things. I said, oh, well, that's fun. I'm going to go do that. And I finished a master's and a PhD doing fun, cool, outdoorsy science things, and did what everybody else seemed to be doing, which is apply for a postdoc. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a postdoc. I studied corals and climate change and geochemistry. And I got this job with Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is a big national laboratory. And I spent 2 years in a white Tyvek suit and the shower cap and the booties and the gloves and all the things. And I'm pipetting and I'm running a mass spec and I'm doing all the science things. And after 2 years in a white bubble, I thought I was going to go crazy. And I could spend all day not talking to anybody and just looking at a computer screen and working in quiet. And so I applied for one of these science fellowships that put scientists into the U.S. government. And they gave me the fellowship to my surprise, and I ended up leaving my bubble, my literal and metaphorical bubble in Los Alamos, and ended up working in the House of Representatives for a guy named Ed Markey, who's now a senator from Massachusetts. He was a representative at the time, and it was a whiplash experience. Because I showed up and a week later I was doing things like writing letters about the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and things that I didn't know anything about. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I was tickled. I was like, well, this is the most fun I've ever had. And,
wow.
And it was fun and it was hard and it was sort of crazy. And I actually was there during the BP oil spill. And so that was the spring of 2010. And Ed Markey was the head of the committee, the subcommittee that had oversight over what's now BOEM, like the offshore, the agency that regulates offshore oil drilling. And so we had the spill cam streaming live on our committee website, and we had oversight hearings, and we had those things that you see in the movies where there's, people in a big, stage, and they're asking questions, and there's cameras, and it's all clicking, and it's all, it doesn't feel real. And I was thinking, gosh, I was like pipetting things in tubes, 6 months ago, and this is kind of crazy, but I sort of like it. And so there was the opportunity to stick around and do some more of this sort of thing, but for the State Department. And that's when I ended up working on fish. Not a thing that I had done before. I had done
corals. It's close.
It's close, except for that I studied corals by killing them and then dissolving up their bodies and measuring the chemistry of their dead skeleton. So this was living things in the ocean. And so I had to learn about fish and fisheries, and people went out on boats with different kind of nets, and they, you know, did things in the ocean, good things and bad things, and, you know, complicated things. And, you know, there were multinational treaties and these big organizations, which are actually how the world makes decisions about tuna that they catch. So like every can of tuna that you buy in the store was caught under an international treaty signed by dozens and dozens of countries. And so there's all of this structure around, well, how do you make decisions every year about how you fish? And, you know, can you catch these sharks also? Well, I don't know. And there was all of that stuff. And that was really interesting. And I was like, well, that's fun. I want to do more of that. And so then I ended up sticking around in science policy. I did advocacy work. I ran a grant making program with Pew, which was fun because there is like nothing more exciting than getting to give money to scientists to do cool things. It's like, you know, I guess it's the opposite of being a meter maid or something. Like everybody loves you. Everyone's nice to you. Even if you're not a nice person, I think like I had to just keep reminding myself that, like, no, people are just being really nice to me because I can maybe help them with their research. But it was super fun because you got to hang out with scientists that were doing really cool things and things that mattered and things that would inform decisions that people were going to make about fisheries or about whales or about you know, communities that rely on the ocean for their livelihoods. So that was all really fun and exciting. And I've spent the last 2.5 years with Oceana, which is an international ocean advocacy organization. So we're in 8 countries plus the European Union, generally fishy countries where there's lots of fish catch, that sort of thing. And I'm having a great time. So that's my life in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's awesome. Backstory. My question is, were you as enthusiastically interested in things before you spent the 2 years in the bubble, or is that an affect of having been?
Well, right. It's all relative, right? So I think actually the funny thing was that I spent, so I was in my bubble, and you know, I mean, the whole reason they put Los Alamos National Labs where it was because it was in the middle of nowhere, and it was, you know, very isolated from everything else, and it was lovely and beautiful, and I love northern New Mexico, but I didn't talk to anyone, and I was very, you know, hyper focused on one thing. And then I went to the Hill and I worked in like a tiny little closet, and the people were running around constantly, like all around me, everywhere, and everything was super busy. And my Outlook calendar that had all of my, you know, meetings and everything in there were all in 15-minute increments, because that's how long you get for meetings when you come in, you're a constituent group and you come and you're like, I want to talk about, you know, some disease or some community issue or some whatever that is. You get 15 minutes. So I went from all day, every day in my white bubble to like 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, 15 minutes.
Wow.
And like sad little introvert scientist's brain just went. So
exploded in a good way.
Yeah. So, and I would come home at the end of the day and my husband would say, well, like, how's this new job? And I would just sit on the couch like, oh, please don't talk to me. I'm tired of talking.
You have 15 minutes and then
15 minutes, that's all you get.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Tell me a little bit about Oceana and what it means to do ocean advocacy.
So I had to learn this because I didn't know what this meant when I started. And I think I got gradually introduced to this by starting in science policy generally, and then moving into more specifically advocacy. So we're a campaign-based organization. So there's lots of NGOs out there in the world, and you can generally bucket certainly the environmental nonprofits into, and there's multiple categories, but for the sake of this discussion, 2 categories. You've got nonprofits that do a lot of project-based work. They run projects, they run programs, they have sort of these ongoing things that they do, which are generally all super useful and relevant and important. And that's one category of nonprofit. And the other are these campaign-based advocacy organizations that work specifically on identifying a policy change or some particular goal that they want to see, and they build a campaign around it with a strategy. There are target humans that you build your strategy around because you need to move X person to make Y decision by Z date, and you build a strategy around that. You have tactics, you have activities, you have all of these tools at your disposal. You have communications and grassroots and lawyers and lobbyists and scientists, and you all work together to build a strategy to achieve some sort of goal. And so campaign-based organizations, they usually have these goals that are generally winnable. Like, you don't want to do something that you don't think you have some chance of making happen. But they tend to be on shorter timeframes than scientists usually like. So you're going to do something in 3 to 5 years. Scientists are like, well, I don't know about that. That's like, you know, things take time. And, you know, so it can be hard to be a scientist in advocacy organizations because things move really fast. Policy can happen really quickly sometimes. Decisions can surprise you. Lawsuits can happen. Changes in administration can happen. And so you have to be quick and not let perfect be the enemy of the good, which can be really hard if you're a scientist and you're used to having everything be sort of exactly right and correct all the time. Things can get sort of messy, but they're also exciting. And then you get to see things happen because of stuff that you did. And that's fun.
Nice.
So what do you do as the chief deputy scientist? Are you doing
deputy chief scientist?
Deputy
I'm not sure if this really matters, the word order,
order of the words.
So it's a good question because I was the first deputy chief scientist in the organization because Oceana got big enough. We're about 250 people, about 50 of us are scientists. And the chief scientist and his deputy that helped on campaigns and expanding into other countries and that sort of thing were getting overwhelmed, and they're like, okay, we need a deputy. And it was basically like, we need help. So I show up, and then just the kitchen sink gets dropped on you. So it was everything from how do we access journal articles? Very difficult if you're a small nonprofit and you try to get a subscription to like one journal, and it's an institutional subscription, and you're spending $6,000 a year to subscribe to one journal. So fixing real problems like that, so that scientists can actually access information, that was a real organizational challenge, not particularly sexy. Making sure everything that we publish, our magazines, our annual report, our blog pieces, anything that goes out the door has scientists laying eyes on it. Reports that we do, they have external peer review, making sure that happens. Care and feeding of all of the scientists, because these folks have professional development needs. We tend to hire because NGOs can't spend as much money hiring people as industry or lobbyists or even the government. Usually scientists that are relatively new in their careers. And so figuring out how you equip them to operate in the world. So mentoring and professional development and all of those things. And so you spend a lot of time doing that. I also supervise the scientists that work on our DC-based campaigns. So all of the fisheries work that we do, our campaign to stop the expansion of offshore oil drilling in the United States, a campaign to ban the trade of shark fins in the United States, working on sustainable fisheries laws, seafood traceability and transparency. So we have scientists that are working directly on those things. And then we have campaigns and country offices and all these other places, including new offices that have opened up. So equipping their scientists with the information that they need and helping them build campaigns, all that stuff that I said about targets and strategy and tactics and all of that other stuff. You take a poor scientist that's like, I finished grad school and this is going to be awesome. And then you dump them into an environment like this without sort of helping them with the tools and the vocabulary that they need to operate in this new environment. Scientists are all taught to write in the passive voice.
Yep.
That's like the most boring thing in the whole world. And you're trying to move people. And you need to move them not in the passive voice. So you have to kind of break them of bad habits sometimes. So there's a lot of that. And then new topics. So, the CEO really wants to learn more about the dangers of dynamite fishing in one of the countries where we work. okay, let's go, let's do it. You know, like you kind of crack open the Science Direct and you start your Googling and you start cold calling scientists, be like, hey, talk to me about what you're doing and what you're seeing and what technology might be out there that we can use to help identify hotspots and deal with, enforcement issues or community needs or that sort of thing. So it's a potpourri.
It sounds really exciting. It sounds like, you went from that very niche, I'm in my white bubble looking at one problem, and now you're overseeing research into multiple problems. You're looking, you're able to dip into a lot of different topics and ideas all around the idea of the oceans and sustainability. But yeah, that's got to be super satisfying.
And scary. And yeah, I think part of it is just that I did not go to school to study any of these things. Yeah. Not really. I mean, the thing that is the skill, right, that you get when you go and you like learn to become a scientist is you learn how to answer questions and solve problems. And so none of the particulars, like no one cares, two figs for understanding levels of cadmium in coral skeleton as a proxy for oceanic upwelling. My dissertation, no one cares. No one cares at all. Yeah. But I know that I can figure something out. Yeah. Eventually, if someone asks me a question, I'll go, okay, all right, I don't know, but I'm going to go find out. And that seems to be like the key job criteria for most of the scientists that we hire. You're not afraid to go figure it out.
Yeah. Very nice. Yeah, we were just talking about before we started the show about how I worked at an aquarium for a while. And when I was hired there, I did not know anything about fish. Nothing. And I had kind of this imposter syndrome for a little bit. And then I realized, oh, wait, that's not why they hired me. They hired me because I'm an educator and I have experience crafting and developing education programs. They don't care that I don't know about fish. I'll figure that out. And I feel like that's something that I found myself coaching people who kind of still haven't found their way yet in the world, aren't sure what they're going to do next, is you never can tell how a professional experience is going to inform future experiences, right? And so you kind of you're building this skill set, and so many things you can extrapolate to future experiences in a way you can't even imagine when you're doing it. It's so great.
Well, it's nice to hear you say that. I certainly felt like I was a crazy person when I was sort of applying for these things, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's no way that no one's going to give me this job. No one's going to. This is crazy. I don't even know why I'm doing this. And then it happens. And then I'm like, oh God. Yeah. Now I have to do this job.
You're gonna have to at some point sit down and explain. Look, I know you hired me. Thank you very much, but I can't possibly do this.
You hired the wrong person.
Going in, right? But but then you're in there and you're handling all of this stuff on sounds like moment by moment, day by day, and on scales of campaign basis too, and with a long game in mind. What are some of the wins? Like if you're looking back at some of the successful campaigns, what would you call the wins?
So in the States, I'm going to give a win with an epilogue. So we had a campaign to stop the expansion of offshore oil drilling in the United States. President Obama released something called the Draft Drill Plan, which is a plan for oil exploration in our nation's coastal waters. And currently, we've got some oil drilling up in Alaska, and there's some in the western Gulf of Mexico. And this opened up new areas to potential offshore oil drilling. Having just seen what happened with the BP oil spill, we thought maybe this was not the best. Any of other good and useful things that happen in the ocean, like fishing and tourism and other things. And not to mention the whole climate change, should we be taking more oil out of the earth? Anyways, so we go through a whole campaign to try to limit this expansion and in fact convince the Obama administration to pull the new areas that had been put into the draft plan to pull it from the final drill plan. So these are areas off of the southeastern coast of the United States, so the Carolinas, and we built this amazing grassroots coalition of, business owners, realtors, chambers of commerce, local elected officials, mayors, representatives, all of these people that looked at their current the current economies that their town was based on, and realized that offshore oil drilling had no place in that. So we ran this whole campaign. It was very successful, and we won. We won. The Obama administration pulled that area out of the drill plan, and we were able to achieve our campaign goal, which was to stop the expansion of offshore oil drilling in the United States. Yay!
And that was the end of it.
And that, yeah, right. Epilogue. New draft drill plan released under the Trump administration that opened up not just the area that Obama had put in his original draft plan, but basically the entire United States minus the waters in Hawaii and Western Pacific. So have to fight that all over again. So this was the same thing that we had done, but now we're expanding all of our grassroots work to include West Coast of the United States, New England, Florida. I mean, there's a lot of coalition building that has to happen around there. And so we're fighting it again. And it's hard because this is like, if you are an advocate and you've been working on this and you just like poured your blood, sweat, and tears into having this happen, and then to have to fight it again is really hard. Like that takes like a lot of psychological energy to be like, oh my God, I just did this. I have to do this again. And it's tough. And defense isn't sexy. Like if you're in an advocacy organization, people always want like the new thing, right? They're like, you're gonna make a new marine protected area. You're gonna do gonna like do something sexy and cool and big, or you're gonna do something like sea turtles or whales or something. I love sea turtles and whales, don't get me wrong. But working on this sort of like non-sexy, stopping bad things from happening is harder. Like it takes a lot more, sort of internal energy because you're not getting that energy externally from, sort of the public and the media and the communities. So necessarily.
Yeah. And you alluded to it a little bit that, you've got this international NGO, this working internationally, and in stuff like this offshore oil drilling campaign that you're doing now, you have to do it around the United States, not just in one localized area. What are some of the challenges to coordinating the messaging, I mean, like you said, these local areas, you have to do coalition building, and little local areas are going to have different needs.
Well, we have an amazing field team. So in this particular situation, we've got folks that are living, that are from and living and working in the communities where they're organizing. And that's key. And it's in fact, it's part of the DNA of Oceana. There are some NGOs out there that will kind of hire, especially if they're US based, they'll hire folks from the United States and they'll send them to other places to do work. And that's a little bit more challenging when you're trying to go to another country and say, you should do this thing. You can imagine that doesn't go over very well. It really should be people from that place talking about things that they want to see, happen in that place. So in the other countries where we work, the heads of those countries and all of the staff of those countries are from those countries. So we have an office in Manila run by this amazing firecracker of a lawyer. She's an environmental lawyer, a Filipino woman, and she has this office of staff that do all of this work throughout the Philippines. And but it's Filipinos working for the Philippines, and in Mexico it's the same, and Peru and Chile and Brazil and Canada and the EU. So all of those places where we work. And actually in Belize, we've also had a campaign to stop offshore oil drilling. And so we do have some campaigns that are sort of replicated across countries. And then we have others that are sort of specific to that particular country.
Last week, we had a story towards the end of the show about dolphins. Their researchers looked at dolphin urine and found phthalates, plastic metabolites in the dolphin urine. Now, we don't know what that means for the dolphin physiology, population, reproduction, anything like that. But Additionally, this last week, there was the big story about the ocean cleanup project going out of San Francisco for a big ocean cleanup. Plastics, they are on the top of everybody's list right now. Get rid of straws. Get rid of your your contacts, your disposable contacts. No more of those.
Well, and by get rid of them, we don't mean get rid of them like down the toilet. Like, don't do that.
Stop that. Yeah, so we know plastics are a big deal. Is Oceana involved in the plastics issue?
So that answer is changing. Plastics is a tough issue. If you're an advocacy organization, you've got to come up with like, what's your policy change? Like, what's the thing that you want to see have happen around ocean plastics? That's hard because there's not one person, there's not one action, there's not sort of one thing that's going to solve this because it's a complicated problem. And so we spent a long time thinking about what that, if we were going to do something in this space, and it is important, so what should we do? Spend a lot of time thinking about what that's going to look like. After spending a long time talking to people, looking at what other folks were doing out there, it came down to the fact that as much as you want to spend time cleaning up and focusing on recycling and all of those things, those are not solutions to the problem. Right. Those are things that sort of help mitigate the problem, or they're band-aids on the problem, but they are not solving the problem. And if we were going to invest our efforts in doing something about it, we wanted to do something that was going to tackle the source of the problem. So, recycling, I think something like 9% of all the plastic ever made has actually been recycled. Like, recycling is not the answer. Cleanups are not the answer. And really it has to be behavior change and policy change at the source, at production, at use. And that's really hard because you're talking about dealing with corporations, you're talking about dealing with, production and other things that are really hard to manage. And so that's something that we're trying to wrap our hands around. I think we've sort of figured out what we don't want to do, and we've figured out the direction that we want to go. But we're still working on putting particulars around what that looks like. But watch this space, because more is going to be happening in the coming year as we start to build our strategy and figure out our targets.
I see the problem though, because it's sort of like, why is Oceana a solar advocacy? Well, because if we get people off oil, we won't have offshore oil. Like, you're kind of having to go further away from the ocean down to something that looks unrelated to try to get everything steered. So that is tough also, because there's an organization that's drawing people to it who want to advocate for the ocean to then go out and be talking about plastic bags at the grocery store, or what types of plastic are used in manufacturing, if there's another way. I see. It's tough. You said cleanup isn't the solution, and I kind of see that too. It's not the problem with offshore oil drilling is that we need better sponges for seabirds. Right? That's not quite the thing, but there is an effort to at least try to throw something at a cleanup effort.
Yeah.
And that would be sorry, I'm gonna keep that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but this is
sexy thing, right? Like you were talking about.
But this is kind of what brought me to this interview, inviting Katie on the show to talk with us. Is there was a tweet thread that you forwarded by Dr. Andrew Thaler related to the science behind the ocean cleanup project and the nets and what's actually going to happen. And I went to the ocean cleanup website, and there's absolutely nothing about ecological effects on the fish anywhere. It's just like, oh, we're going to have these nets, and because of the flow, the fish are going to be fine. Everything's fine. Trust us. And so can you talk a little bit about what science is out there? Is this just a wait and see kind of thing that we have to just wait and see if it works?
Yeah. Well, I will preface everything that I say with, this is not what I spend my everyday thinking about. And it's complicated. Isn't it always complicated? And I hope that it works, because wouldn't that be great? But I have a lot of concerns and don't have high hopes. And I think one of the bigger challenges is that you've got this U-shaped thing with a curtain hanging underneath it. This curtain is about 10 feet long, and it's a U, and it's supposed to kind of move through the ocean like this. And it'll just sort of scoop up, and the plastic that's floating on the surface, anything that's sort of 10 feet and above, the little curtain will sort of guide it up into this boom thing, and it will sort of get collected along this boom. You know, in a nutshell, that's how it's supposed to work.
Wait. Hang on. I have read nothing. I've seen nothing. Is this? They're not going to. I thought this was something that was going to go and try to remove like the floating island of plastic, like specifically there.
Yes.
It's not just cruising around.
Well, in theory, it's supposed to move on its own to a certain extent with the wind and the waves. It's not like a gas powered thing that's happening. It's supposed to sort of be able to be deployed on its own. Unclear entirely to me exactly how that works or what happens in storms or really bad waves, or you can set that aside for a second.
Where it puts it?
Yeah. So, I mean, they're testing that now. And originally this was supposed to be, if you looked at the very early designs, it was supposed to be kilometers long, like tens of kilometers, I mean, big. And they've sort of gradually been shrinking them, I think, as they've sort of come to understand that the design might not work if you're looking at, tens of kilometers long. And so they've gotten smaller, and they're testing it, I think near you, Blair, right? Off of the coast of San Francisco. And if that works, I think they're going to spend 2 weeks sort of closer to shore seeing how that goes. And if that goes well, they're going to tow it further offshore. But there's some questions that people have. One, a lot of time and money and energy has been spent on this, and for questionable sort of ROI, like the return on investment. I think they've raised something like $35 million, and they haven't deployed a workable thing yet. And for $35 million, you could put trash collectors at the mouth of the 10 major rivers that dump, 90% of the plastic that goes into the ocean. Deal with it at the big stuff at the source. I think the other problem is you hear a lot about microplastics. And so these are the breakdown products. These are microfibers. These are these little tiny things, and figuring out how you clean up those without dealing with like biofouling and stuff just getting gooey and filled with like plankton slime. I have a soft spot for zooplankton, which are like the little tiny animals that live in the ocean. Because when you look at their environmental impact statement that they did publish, but it was published only about a month or so before they deployed the thing. So it was kind of unclear how the, external scientists were going to have time to review and then, make any design adjustments as a result of it. But they said that there was going to be negligible impact on the zooplankton. But my concern is that you've got a thing that's now, 600-meter long boom with a 10-foot long, impermeable curtain thing, and you're sweeping through the ocean, and every living little zooplankton is now getting trapped by your curtain of something. And those are all of your fish larvae. That's your food for your bigger fish. And you've now just removed, like, sent a big scraper, and have just carved out the base of the food chain for, however long you're going, and sweeping all of that up. And so I took issue with negligible impacts to the planktons. So nobody loves the planktons. Everyone's sizist. Everybody likes the big things. Nobody likes the little things. So I think that there's just a lot of questions, and folks are looking at the fact that we have some actual solutions that we could employ now, as opposed to sort of these crazy solutions that we're not necessarily sure will work and are only going to move some surface plastic. There's lots of plastic that's below 10 feet. And what about that? Blah, blah, blah. So, but maybe it works. We'll find out.
So I have an interesting kind of thought about all of this. And that is that, we talk on the show all the time about how people are so fascinated with space and they want to explore space, but there's so much of the ocean that we have yet to explore, right? And then even just now, I'm thinking about how something as simple as the ozone was a problem. Okay, we outlawed CFCs, pretty much fixed, right? Mm-hmm. But why is the ozone layer something that we can't really fathom, we can't understand, we can't really see it, the average person, but had to be saved, took care of it. The ocean is something that is so kind of nebulous, difficult for people to understand, difficult for people to empathize with and be there. When you talk about things like the garbage patch and the gyres that are full of these trash islands, and the fact that our plastic wastes are going straight there, I feel like there's this disconnect for those of us on land, especially people in big cities, that don't really see the benefits of the ocean, the necessity of the ocean, and what the ocean needs from us. And I feel like I'm assuming that's a lot of what Oceana is trying to do, right? Is to bring the ocean back to us land mammals. But, you know, do you have any words of wisdom? I mean, I'm trying to interpret ocean issues all the time. What have you kind of found is a good way to make people feel connected and make people care about this watery world that feels so separate sometimes?
Yeah, it's not easy. I admit I wasn't a big ocean person until I learned to scuba dive. And that was the thing that made me discover that there was something there. Like, I'd gone to the ocean and swam in the ocean. That was, you know, fine and nice. But I learned how to dive, and it felt like I was, it's the closest that any of us are going to get to being an astronaut. You're neutrally buoyant. You've got a self-contained breathing thing on your head, and you've got all this equipment and gases, and you breathe, and it's just you're in this bubble of you know, fake atmosphere, because you don't belong in this place, and you're sort of floating through this alien environment, and you know, you don't belong there, and all of his other animals belong there, and they're looking at you like, what are you doing? And that was really fun and great. But not everybody can do that. It's really hard to do. And so how do you make that real to other folks? And you worked at an aquarium, like that. There's not a lot of other options. And the Blue Planet is something else that I like. At a certain point, I bought like multiple DVD copies of the Blue Planet, and I was just giving them out
to people.
Yes. Yeah, you just watch this. And
that came before Planet Earth.
Yeah, I know, because it's, the ocean's a crazy place. Yeah! There was one section of the Blue Planet where you actually watch a coral, like a stony coral, that you know, tropical coral reef coral. You watch it vomit its own guts to digest the next door coral that was like kind of encroaching on its space, and it went like blah, and it like digested the coral next to it, like a big kind of F you to this coral. And then it like sucked all of its guts back into its body, and was like, dum-da-dum-da-dum, I got some new real estate over here now, because I just ate this coral next to me. And you're like, what was that? And so I think the ocean is this like crazy place that has all of these really good stories in it, but it needs storytellers, and it's hard, you know, like you fly over an ocean and you look down and it's just like blue nothing, and there's all of this crazy banana stuff happening underneath it. And so that's why it's, you know, it's aquariums, it's Blue Planet, it's sharing stories, it's oh gosh, there was a funny viral video of some fishermen from Boston, very thick Boston accents, that come across a mola mola, the sunfish, the weird, freaky looking sunfish. Oh, yeah. And they're losing their minds. They're like, they think it's a baby whale. They think it's a tuna. They think it's a sea turtle, and they don't know what it is, but it's this crazy freaking creature. And that's the sort of excitement that you need to convey to have people. Yes, the mola mola. It's so weird. Also, it's huge. Look at the people compared to the mola mola. And so I think that's one part of it, is telling stories about the ocean and narrative. I love scientists. I am a scientist. We're not always the best at storytelling. So for all of the scientists out there that are working on their storytelling chops, like, yay for you. Please do more of that. And then I think the other thing, and this is something that's important for Oceana, is just the fact that this is a critical food source, and it's important to communities and livelihoods, and nutrition and food security. And there is, when you read about food security generally, it's very agricultural based. It's a lot about, grain staples. And the world is growing. People want protein. Most of the land-based animal protein is not fantastic for the environment. And wild-caught seafood has a relatively low carbon footprint. It's healthy for you. It's a renewable resource. It requires no fresh water to grow. It requires no arable land. And if you manage it properly, that's a fantastic thing. And we can do better. So that's really, we kind of come at it from the ocean's freaking amazing, and also it feeds people. So let's take care of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is really probably the biggest thing it's yes, appreciate the oceans, but let's understand how essential the oceans are to our ability to survive. It's our food source. It's amazing. And we can do better. I mean, I read an article today about, I think it was Taiwanese fishing fleets and their human trafficking and all. It's like piracy of the seas. And I was like, this isn't fishermen? What's going on? And they, people reporting it's like the worst thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other stories that are coming out about satellite tracking that's getting faster and faster. So the time resolution of knowing when boats are in places they shouldn't be is better.
It's a really cool tool. There's something called Global Fishing Watch, which Oceana was a founding partner of this tool. You can go to globalfishingwatch.org, and it provides essentially a real-time map of global fishing activity. And you can sort by flag. You can be like, I want to see all of the boats that are flagged to Spain. And you'll see where they all go, what kinds of fishing they do, what other countries they're operating in, and you can see it over time. You can see, you can zoom in on protected areas and see if there's any boats that look like they're fishing in protected areas. So journalists use it, governments use it. We use it in advocacy so that we can take a look at, where fleets are going, where there might be hotspots of illegal activity, that sort of thing. So it's a fun, completely free, publicly available tool. If you want to nerd out on big data about the oceans, it's there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm thankful for groups like Oceana for helping to avoid the jellyfish future. I mean, I remember years back listening to an episode, some story on NPR in which it was someone from Japan saying, oh yes, all the fish are going to be gone and I'm learning how to prepare jellyfish.
Yeah, the jellyfish burger.
We will all eat jellyfish.
I tried jellyfish recently. I didn't love it.
Yeah. Tell me, what was it? What was the mouthfeel?
Rubber band.
Rubber band.
Yeah.
Like a fishy rubber band. Like, did it have a aroma?
It didn't really have a taste. It kind of soaked up the taste of whatever it was in, but otherwise it really just tasted like slightly more gelatinous rubber band, like more so than calamari. I did not love the mouthfeel.
Wow. Okay. That's a good question. Yeah. That's another thing. What happens to all the jellyfish in the ocean cleanup? You're like, I'm just going to swipe up all the jellyfish.
Well,
jellyfish are like,
climate change is going to make them explode anyway, so it's fine. Thin out the herd.
Yeah, like population control measure.
Yeah,
we just send it's like the Roomba of the ocean. And it's just like,
eating up the carpet as it goes.
Yeah,
was that your pet? Sorry, didn't mean to get that.
Oopsie.
Well, I consider myself to be a very patriotic Earthling, and it's called the Blue Planet, presumably because most of it is ocean. And so you've got a big job. You've got to look out for and protect most of planet Earth. That's a pretty big job.
I already have enough pressure at work. This is not fair. Don't make it worse. Like, I got to go to bed. It's the East Coast. I'm going to fall asleep and then
the ocean is constantly in need of your supervision and help. It must be like, it's the thing that I guess when we first start talking about this, I was thinking, gosh, yeah, you have all these different coastal states and what they're, but yeah, no, it's the oceans go to other countries too, don't they?
Yep.
So
well,
there is.
seafood, oxygen. You know, there's a bunch of things that the ocean does for, you know, Mongolia and, you know, insert landlocked country name. So, you know, in June, we had the 5th International Marine Conservation Congress, which is put on by the Society for Conservation Biology. And it's the largest gathering of marine conservation professionals in the world. And as hard as the job is, like seeing all of those people in one place and all the amazing stuff that they're doing was really energizing and made me really proud to be a part of that group, because these people are doing like really hard stuff and not necessarily getting the sort of attention and resources that even terrestrial conservation folks tend to get, which of course, you know, it's logical, right? Like people know what's in their backyard. It's easier to count trees than fish. Like they don't move.
Yeah.
Like, they don't cross international boundaries all willy-nilly. So, you know, it's a tough gig. So folks are really doing great stuff.
Thank you for being a part of that effort. Thank you for joining us tonight.
It's a pleasure.
If people do want to find out more about Oceana, where can they find information?
Oceana.org is our website, and I tweet oceany things at Katie_@_C. So yeah, if you're interested and want to know more.
Letter C or SEA?
SEA. And the at is an AT. I realized when I picked my Twitter handle, it's a little confusing. Should I change it?
No.
Okay. Is that hard? Is that
we've already started connecting with you and linking to you through our Twitter, and we'll have a link on our website so people will be able to find it there. But yes, Katie_@_C.
I could have done better.
It'll be less likely to be pirated or copied that way. So you're all set.
Okay. Thanks for making me feel better. Yeah. My poor choice of Twitter handle. Okay. Well, thank you guys. This was really fun.
Yeah. It was really, really great getting to speak with you. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good night.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful night. Good night's sleep.
Thank you. You made me all stressed now. I don't know. I have a drink.
We're behind you. We're behind the oceans. You're doing good work.
Don't go.
No stress. No stress.
Did we already say this? Like, what's the best way for people who are just listening, and maybe don't even have an ocean next to them, to really get involved if they wanted to do something? How do they sign up? How do we go do this? How do we help?
So you can go to Oceana.org and sign up to be a wave maker. So you get sort of newsletters and alerts about actions. So if there's something in particular that's coming up, like a bill to weaken the Marine Mammal Protection Act is coming up for consideration at a committee, you give us your zip code. We know where you are. We can send you emails saying, please call your representative so-and-so in this committee because they're trying to weaken the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and we think that's a bad idea. So those are the sorts of actions that you can do, which don't take too much time, but really help because you're actually making a one-on-one connection to your elected official and letting them know that somebody's actually paying attention and cares. So that helps a lot.
That's important. Yeah.
Just showing up. It's important. So, yeah.
And we forget that. We forget that these days, in these days of social media and odd Twitter handles.
Yeah. Yeah. Tweeting is nice. Calling your congressman is better.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Now, thank you very much. Have a wonderful
good night.
All right, everybody. This is This Week in Science. We are going to take a little break right now. It's time for me to tell you some things about This Week in Science. So stay tuned. We have Ignoble intent coming up, as well as all sorts of other things. We've got some touchy sea otters in Blair's Animal Corner. And I think Justin has an elephant, or is it a mystery? It's a mystery. We'll be back in just a few more moments. Stay tuned.
Explain things you've heard more than intuition. collide and freeze, it shows the way to go. New conclusion, the methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I do appreciate your time, your attention, joining us for great interviews like we just had with Dr. Matthews and all the science news that is to come. Help keep this show afloat. Help keep this show going. How can you do it? Several ways. First off, tell your friends about TWIS. TWIS.org is our website. And if you tell them to go to TWIS.org, they can find out all sorts of information about TWIS and even subscribe. That's right. There's a big orange subscribe button right there at the top of the page. You click on that subscribe button and you can join using one of the big threes: Google Play's podcast portal, iTunes, which I think is now the Apple podcast something or other, and YouTube. You can subscribe to all these places. You get updates about This Week in Science when we publish new episodes so that you never miss an episode. Sounds pretty awesome, doesn't it? Oh, look, twist.org is also where you can find out all sorts of wonderful things, past episodes, etc. If you are interested in helping out other than subscribing or getting other people to subscribe and join in the family of TWIS, you can help us out by buying our merchandise. You can click on our Zazzle store link, which will take you to the store located at zazzle.com/thisweekinscience. And you will be able to find lots of wonderful goodies. We've got mouse pads, we've got mugs, phone covers, we've got lumbar pillows. I mean, really, truly lumbar pillows. We've got all sorts of art from past Blair's Animal Corner calendars on some of these wonderful items, and others have the TWIS logo on them, so you can wear or use these things with pride and joy, knowing that you are potentially exposing somebody to TWIS who hasn't seen it before. And a portion of the proceeds go to support us directly, and so you are helping us out just by shopping in our Zazzle store. If you're not interested in buying stuff, or you already have enough TWIS mugs on your shelf, I don't know how you could have enough, though. I mean, come on, baker's dozen of mugs, that'd be awesome. The other way you can help out is by directly donating. There is a yellow donate button that if you click on it will take you to a PayPal interface where you can donate using PayPal. Same thing, if you click on any of the recent episodes and scroll through the show notes, at the bottom of the page are pink links, which allow you to set up recurring donations through PayPal. So the yellow button, it'll just be a quick one-time donation. These pink buttons, you can set up donations that are set it and forget it. If you're interested in a different kind of set it and forget it, but keep helping TWIS kind of arrangement, click on that Patreon link that is at the top of our TWIS page. That'll take you to our Patreon account, patreon.com/thisweekinscience. We have a wonderful community over there that's growing, and you can be a part of it. If you scroll down, you can choose the level of your support. We have multiple levels, many tiers of support in which you receive various gifts from us in return for your support. Best tier, though, the Photon support tier, $10 a month. That's like $2-ish per episode. Cup of coffee costs that much these days. So if we are worth as much as a cup of coffee for you, right? This episode you're listening to right now, if we give you as much satisfaction as a cup of coffee, maybe consider that $10 a month tier. That's it. Just $10 a month. And we will thank you by name at the end of the show. I mean, it's so easy. Click on that. And it's one way to keep going. And it'll be set up for just $10 a month. Every month. That's that easy. And you'll be supporting us and knowing you're helping us keep this show going and to help us grow what we're doing into something bigger, because we want to keep giving you all the science that we can. And we can't do it without you. You know that? Because you know this. We really can't do this without you. Thank you for your support.
Can't explain the things you've heard more than pressure. A lot of reason chose the way to go. New conclusion. The methods, a hypothesis, and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see. The answers lie somewhere within this scatter plot of first assumptions were.
And we're back. You're listening to This Week in Science. Kiki, what time is it?
Oh, it's time for that wonderful section of the show that we love to call This Weekend. What has science done for me lately? Oh, what has it done? Oh, science. This letter comes from a newer listener who I did see him in our YouTube chat room earlier, but I think he had to leave because of the late hour. But I know he'll catch this later. He wrote in, "Hey, Dr. Kiki, newer listener, but I have caught up on the last year of shows. New Patreon sponsor as well. Happy to be part of the TWIS family. Science is so important to me, not just for my job as a hazardous waste tech transporter, boy, to the tests we use to identify harmful chemicals so that we can take the proper precautions to test ourselves so I can go home to my 3 kids, one who has autism. To some people, this phrase is not a good thing. I started the same way, but my wife, being who she is, recognized the symptoms. To his pediatric doctor who specialized in developmental disabilities, to the specialized school that he went to at 2.5. His insatiable need for knowledge at 5 is astounding, i.e. periodic table, human physiology, all the countries and capitals. As with many who are on the spectrum, he was lacking in social skills, but speech therapy and his school have made leaps and bounds. So science has altered mine and my family's life. Thank you for all you do, Ben Bignell."
Thank you, Ben.
Excellent.
I love how it went from, hazardous chemicals and understanding chemistry to be able to know whether or not you've been exposed to something or whether or not everything, is something harmful. Is it safe? It's very technical chemical aspect to a neurological disability, to developmental biology and behavior and psychology, and absolutely across fields of science, life is affected in so many ways. And this letter is a wonderful example of that.
And that is a tough job.
Mhm.
Because you in most sort of fields, you can really prepare for your day. Not that he doesn't prepare for it, but the unknown of what falls under hazardous, that you may have to go and confront to clean up is not going to be the same thing as it was the last trip out or the one before that or the one before that. There is a lot of unknown that you encounter in a job like that, and a lot of it can be very dangerous. So
It's not spilt milk, that's for sure.
But to be able to do that every day means you have faith in your systems. And, that also means having faith in science and the way those systems were set up. So
Having an understanding that they work.
Yeah.
That the knowledge is real.
Yep.
Knowledge is real. That's right. They might be giants, I think. Anyway, Ben, thank you so much for writing in. I really appreciate your letter. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon, and thank you for being a new listener. Thank you for joining the family of TWIS. Everyone out there, we need you to write in. I need you to write me. I can't read your letter if you don't write me. If you don't write me and you don't tell me these things, I can't say them on the air, right? It's all about sharing. You share with me, I share with everyone else. So to do that, leave me a message on our Facebook page, please, facebook.com/thisweekinscience, or write me an email, Kirsten, Kirsten, @thisweekinscience.com. And yes, we are going to keep doing this. We're going to fill it every week of the year with your stories. So keep them coming, please. This is This Week in Science. It's time for some more science. Oh my goodness. We are going to keep going. What do I have? I have some stories. You guys ready for a story or two?
Yes.
Let's lead it off with the Ignoble Awards.
Is it really time again already?
I know. I feel like we just had these awards just happen. It's been another year. Time keeps moving more quickly. I need to have more novel events in my life, more new experiences. I got to slow down time. Now I'm going to start singing Cher, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to do that one. The 2000 Ig Nobel Prize winners. These were awarded at the 28th first annual Ig Nobel Prize ceremony on Thursday, September 13th, 2018 at Harvard's Sanders Theater. You can actually watch this award ceremony because it was webcast and they still have it available. But these are the following winners in the Medicine Prize. The winners came from the United States, Mark Mitchell and David Wartinger, for using roller coaster rides to try to hasten the passage of kidney stones.
Oh.
The paper they wrote was titled Validation of a Functional Pilocalcial Renal Model for the Evaluation of Renal Calculi Passage while riding a roller coaster.
So that means you have to pee while you're on the roller coaster, right? In order to pass the kidney stone.
I don't know if that was what happened, but I believe that I don't know if they peed while on the roller coaster or after, but the vibrations, it would be the jolts and the vibrations of the roller coaster would shake them loose, break them up and shake them loose.
I was picturing they were attached to a catheter while on a roller coaster.
Could be. I didn't see the methods. I don't know.
I would assume that they give somebody a big beverage on a hot day as they wait in a long line that keeps winding back and again. And you think you're going to get on the ride and you realize, turn the corner. Oh, nope. It's a whole bunch more line. We're going to be standing here a long time.
Another 2 hours.
Roller coaster. You have to be with such tremendous force
that helps to pass. Right. Yeah. That passes the kidney stone. Well, yes. So that is the Medicine Prize. In anthropology, it was an international team of researchers from Sweden, Romania, Denmark, the Netherlands, Germany, UK, Indonesia, and Italy. The winners wrote an article, or they did research on collecting evidence in a zoo, Blair, that chimpanzees imitate humans about as often and about as well as humans imitate chimpanzees.
That checks out, for sure.
The article was titled Spontaneous Cross-Species Imitation in Interaction Between Chimpanzee and Zoo Visitors.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
So the researchers were there watching, not just the chimpanzees doing their behaviors, but also the humans and vice versa. Who's copying who?
Gosh, every day when people walk past the wolf exhibit, all you hear is them going, oh. You're like, okay, just stop. No.
You're not a wolf. In the Biology Prize, Sweden, Colombia, Germany, France, Switzerland, these researchers all got the award for demonstrating that wine experts can reliably identify by smell the presence of a single fly in a glass of wine.
No.
Really?
Yes. If there is a fly in the wine has to spoiled. They smell the fly. There's some interaction. The article was called "The Scent of the Fly."
So is this these are wine experts, though. These are people with these trained noses.
Which we've talked about before, that they can't tell the difference between expensive and cheap wine. So
well, right, but because
they do know if there's a fly.
Right. Well, because that part of wine connoisseurship is subjective, and there's a great movie, and I don't know the name of it, but it's about a wine expert, and it's ridiculous. But I have taken these sniff tests of the oils that can go into the different scents that are added, and there's such an array that I'm terrible at this. I'm like the worst person at this, but it's sort of funny. Like there's one flavoring that has a scent that I'm like, this is an old motel. This is like an old motel that's run down, and it's like it smells like the drapes or the bedding of the motel. It turned out it was tobacco, which like and some people were like, that sounds like smells like old people, like old people in old motels where people smoked, right? Like this is this is what generates a smell. And so to be able to be trained enough to pick up the hints of these different scents, though, and the
a hint of Drosophila.
Right. I don't know that they identified it as a fly. I don't know if that's the thing, but they could tell that there was something
different,
amiss, at least. Makes total sense. That's a skill, though whether a wine is good or not is completely subjective.
Right. The chemistry prize to Portugal, Paolo Romayo and Adela Alarco, I can't pronounce that, I'm sorry, and the late Cesar Viana for measuring the degree to which human saliva is a good cleaning agent for dirty surfaces. And it's
that's like the good old, like, let me get that thing right there. You just
and
get
it was
that over your face.
Absolutely based upon the idea that people do clean things with their saliva all the time.
It's acidic, right?
Yeah, we have amylase. We have our digestive proteins in our saliva that eat things up. I'm going to eat you up. Yes. So they did that. How good is it?
Good.
The medical education prize goes to Japan, Akira Horiuchi, for the medical report colonoscopy in the sitting position.
What?
Lessons learned from self-colonoscopy.
Oh no. There's so much to unpack there.
Unpack.
First of all, you have the position.
Is that what it's called? Unpacking?
And second of all, you have the fact that they're doing it on themselves.
Yes.
It's lots of layers going on.
Many layers to this one, indeed.
Oh no.
I got to back up 1 second though. To the
research,
saliva.
Everyone, research.
I got to back up to the saliva story for a second.
Oh, you're backing us up. Jeez.
Just for a second. My girls have been sick. Got a cold. And so my older daughter tells the younger daughter, as she's about to come hug me, not to kiss me because I'm not sick and she doesn't want me to get the cold. She's very sweet. She's looking out for me and informing the young one. So she goes, okay, I'll just give him a hug. And she walks up and she sticks out her tongue at the last second and licks me from my chin to my eyebrow.
Yes.
And goes, now you have the germs too. Now I can kiss you.
Good logic.
This is the solution. It wasn't to clean me, but it was if Papa gets sick, then I can kiss him again. Perfect.
I like that logic. I'm down with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will let you know, actually, more people become sick not from the swapping of saliva, but from the swapping of sneezes and coughs and the things that are on your hands. So,
you can kiss people, just don't shake hands with them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on from spit and colonoscopies, the Literature Prize awarded to Australia, El Salvador, and the UK for documenting that most people who use complicated products do not read the instruction manual. The article was titled "Life is Too Short to RTFM: How Users Relate to Documentation and Excess Features in Consumer Products."
Yeah. I believe this is me.
No,
what, RTFM? What's that?
I knew somebody was going to ask that. Go look it up.
Oh no.
Read the
Too
freaking
long didn't read is what I
manual.
was assuming was TLDR.
Read the
Right,
full
too long
manual. I think.
read
is what
the
they're
full
saying.
manual.
Read the full manual.
Oh. Is that a
Mhm.
thing? I've never heard of that one.
It is now.
It is a
wasn't-
thing.
it
We're
wasn't-
changing
Oh
it.
no, it's not read the full manual. It's
No.
read the
Thank you.
boop manual.
Okay.
Exactly. The Nutrition Prize goes to researchers from Zimbabwe, Tanzania, and UK, James Cole, for calculating that the caloric intake from a human cannibalism diet is significantly lower than the caloric intake from most other traditional meat diets.
So lose weight, become a cannibal.
At least in the Paleolithic. The reference article was assessing the caloric significance of episodes of human cannibalism in the Paleolithic. So this will be good for all the good news for all the paleo dieters out there. If you really want to eat like someone from the Paleolithic and lose weight, then maybe become a cannibal.
Kiki, the sad thing is somebody's going to take your advice.
Oh, I know. I'm not actually, this is not medical advice. Please don't listen to me on that thing.
Neighbors.
I'm joking. I'm kidding.
Don't bite your friends.
The Peace Prize, Spain and Colombia, for measuring the frequency, motivation, and effects of shouting and cursing while driving an automobile.
Oh.
On the driver or on the other drivers around you?
The article was entitled Shouting and Cursing While Driving, Frequency, Reasons, Perceived Risk, and Punishment.
I think it's healing, personally. If I'm not
That's
yelling,
when you're shouting at people.
then it gets pent up and I drive more aggressively. But if I can just kind of shout at somebody, then it's gone. It's over. I'm good. Back in
Here's
the
the
zen.
question,
Back to my
though.
music.
Back
the
to the
question.
zen.
Are you rolling down the window and shouting loud enough for them to hear you? Or
No.
are you just shouting at
Actually, it's
yourself?
sometimes I'm shouting, but also sometimes I'm having a very stern conversation with somebody. And a lot of sarcasm, a lot of, oh no, why would you go ahead and put on your turn signal? Nobody needs to know that you're planning on turning at this point. Yes, go ahead, whatever you need.
Shouty Blair drives. Oh my. The award for reproductive medicine goes to researchers from USA, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, India, and Bangladesh for using postage stamps to test whether the male sexual organ is functioning properly. As described in their study, nocturnal penile tumescence monitoring with stamps.
What?
I tried to find the methods section of this paper, but it was behind a paywall, so I couldn't access it.
What? I'm so confused.
I know. Stamps. Oh no.
Are alive?
Other uses for postage stamps.
How do you apply them?
I don't know.
I don't. What?
Science. And finally, the Economics Prize was awarded to researchers from Canada, China, Singapore, and the USA for inventing whether it's effective for employees to use voodoo dolls to retaliate against abusive bosses. And the answer is yes.
I think it's the same. It's conducive, right?
It was psychologically
cathartic.
effective.
Yeah,
Yes, it was cathartic. It helped the employees relieve their stress and get rid of the aggression they felt toward their bosses without actually doing any harm.
It's especially effective if you make it very lifelike and leave it out on your desk.
That would be tough.
Yeah.
Indeed, right on my desk. You were mean to me. Pin in the nose.
But then, I walk by and I go, that weird doll looks surprisingly like me.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
It's just a coincidence.
Also,
absolutely.
Half of it is burnt to a crisp, and there are several pins in it.
Coincidence, coincidence.
Do you want to have a chat in the conference room?
Karen. And that does it for the Ignoble Prizes for 2018. The Ignoble Prizes for achievements that first make people laugh and then make them think, which I think we did a lot of, and I hope people continue to.
Yeah.
These awards were fantastic this year. Can't wait for next year. But the Nobel Prizes are coming soon. What is it? It's going to be like next week or the week after. We're going to be reporting on the actual Nobels. Those will be up in just a little bit.
Mm.
Maybe they'll actually award something to women this year. Let's see.
Don't be silly.
Don't be silly. All right, that does it for me. Justin, what did you bring? What you got for me?
What do I have? This is researchers at King's College London have discovered a feedback loop that may underlie brain degeneration in Alzheimer's disease. One that they say may help explain why a lot of the drug trials that have gone on have failed after showing preliminary hope of being effective. So the study also identifies a drug that they say can break this loop and protect against memory loss thus far in animal models. So it goes like this. There's an overproduction of a protein, beta amyloid, and is strongly linked to development of Alzheimer's disease, correlative at least. But drugs that target the beta amyloid have failed in clinical trials. So this beta amyloid attacks and destroys synapses, the connections between nerve cells in the brain, and this, of course, results in the memory problems, dementia, and can eventually lead to death. In the study published in Transitional Psychiatry, researchers found that when beta amyloid destroys a synapse, the nerve cells make more beta amyloid. So it's like every time you cut down a tree, another lumberjack or two appear and go about cutting down trees. So you can see how this cascades. In the study, researchers found that, well, here we go. This is quotey voice of senior author Dr. Richard Killick from the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology, and Neuroscience. He says, we show that a vicious positive feedback loop exists in which beta amyloid drives its own production. We think that once this feedback loop gets out of control, it's too late for drugs which target beta amyloid to be effective, which could explain why so many of the trials have failed. Our work uncovers the intimate link between synapse loss and beta amyloid in the earliest stages of Alzheimer's disease, says then Dr. Christina Elliott, also at the Institute of Psychiatry, Psychology, and Neuroscience, stating this is a major step forward in understanding the disease and highlights the importance of early therapeutic intervention. But how is this happening? The researchers found that a protein called DKK1 potently stimulates that production of beta amyloid, is central to this positive feedback loop. Previous research has identified it as a central player in Alzheimer's, and while this protein is barely detectable in the brains of younger adults, its production or its appearance increases as we age. So, which got me thinking, like, this could be then, as we're normally pruning, I'm wondering, as neurons normally die, are we just sort of naturally creating more of this beta amyloid? So instead of targeting the beta amyloid itself, researchers believe targeting the protein DKK1 could be a better way to halt the progress of Alzheimer's disease by disrupting the cycle of beta amyloid production that comes from the synapse loss. Makes perfect sense. Importantly, this is Dr. Killick again. Importantly, our work has shown that we may already be in a position to block the feedback loop with a drug called Fasudil, something that's a drug that's being used in some countries for stroke currently. We have convincingly shown that this drug can protect synapses and memory in animal models with Alzheimer's, and at the same time reduces the amount of beta amyloid that is in the brain. Researchers found that in mice engineered to develop large deposits of beta amyloid in their brains as they age, just 2 weeks of treatment with the drug dramatically reduced the deposits. researchers at King's College London are now seeking funding to run early stage on sufferers of Alzheimer's to determine if it can actually improve brain health and prevent cognitive decline. So
That's cool.
So there's that, and then we also had a few other stories targeting Alzheimer's and some new discoveries that have happened in the last few years. And I think this story caught my eye this week because we're saying goodbye to a member of my extended family this week who died after a long battle with Alzheimer's. Frank Parker, who many people may have actually seen and gotten to know a little bit because he played Grandpa Sean Brady on Days of Our Lives, the patriarch of the family there for about 20 years. And what you saw on screen was very much who Frank was in person. He was a warm, loving guy, and he liked to light up a room with a song. So this is, and so we were talking to 3 weeks ago about some new discoveries about the garbage removal system being disrupted. The lymph nodal system that's around the brain that was only discovered back in 2014. You know, we live at this time when we're so close. We're so close to ending the suffering of so many people at the hands of these awful diseases. So I wish them much luck in the future on this research. And even though we kind of tend to avoid talking about the potential possible maybe cures of all of the medical conditions because there's so much research going on that it's hard to just keep talking about the potentials. But when they're getting close to trials on a drug, it's time for those who, if you know somebody, who's suffering, look for one of these clinical trials. See if there's one in your area. See if there's somewhere they can sign up and be part of that test group to see, because without a whole lot of options, the next best thing is worth trying.
Well, and Alzheimer's is something that we're still not 100% sure how it happens or where it comes from. I feel like we've settled recently that it's definitely a mixture of environmental and genetic factors, but when it's something that it's still really difficult to predict when and where it's going to happen, and it's also really difficult to prevent. The treatments are the thing to look at for this problem at this point. So it's,
right.
It's very inspiring.
We don't know where. Yeah, you're right. We don't know exactly how it gets its start, where the seed begins. But so many of us are affected by family members and friends who are affected by this disorder. And I've had family members succumb to Alzheimer's as well. And it's no fun because people lose themselves. They lose who they were, and because their brains start shutting down and they start losing memories, or they start the ability to create new memories isn't there anymore. They live in the past more than in the present. And so I'm sorry to hear about your family member and saying goodbye, but you're right. This is interesting and important research, and the fact that there is a drug that they're working on works in the mice. Let's see this clinical trial. Let's see it block this protein. Let's see it block the amyloids. Let's see if it works.
And that's an interesting thing that you say too about the so much of what you lose is memory, because we humans are more than an arrangement of atoms or an organization of cells. We are a collection of memories. The memories that we have of those things which are our life experiences that make us who we are and guide us through our day-to-day lives is really who we ultimately are to a large degree.
Yep. Who are we? We are This Week in Science, though, and we are moving forward into the next part of our show. It's a particular time right now. It is a very special time right now because it is time for
But basically what they're doing
Blair's
is
Animal
creating energy.
Corner.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What you got, Blair?
I have 120-pound, 5-foot-long aquatic monsters that devour 25% of their own body weight every day just to stay warm. What are they?
You said they're monsters. I don't know.
Sea otters.
No.
Oh, it's not a monster.
They're very cute. They're also weasels, and we know not to trust weasels, right? Yeah. So they're actually voracious hunters, these sea otters. They do, in fact, hunt and eat 25% of their own body weight every day to keep their heat up in the murky, cloudy waters of Monterey Bay, for example. And there's not a lot that we know about their hunting methods because they stop hunting when we get near them, when humans stop by. There's a couple reasons for that. Sometimes they act shy and they run away. Sometimes they defend their space, which is why you should never approach a wild sea or river otter because people end up in the hospital all the time from that. So just because they're cute, that does not mean they're harmless. Regardless, the University of Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, and our lead researcher, Sarah McKay-Strobel, wanted to see whether these amazing hunters, these dexterous creatures, might use their whiskers and their paws to hunt by touch, since they can't see in the extremely cloudy Monterey Bay waters. So sea otters can be tough to train for a bunch of reasons, but Strobel actually succeeded. She took one particular wild sea otter that they named Selka at the Long Marine Laboratory at UC Santa Cruz. They trained her to approach a cabinet perched on the side of a pool where they concealed a pair of side-by-side vertically rigged boards. One had ridges in it that were 2 millimeters wide, and another had 5 millimeter wide ridges or grooves. She stuck her paw in there through a narrow slot and touched both. She was rewarded whenever she touched the 2 millimeter ridges, because it would actually, the 5 millimeter was rigid, the 2 millimeter would depress and make a clicking sound, which, as some of us know who've seen animal training occur, a clicker sound is a really easy way of indicating to an animal that they've done exactly what you want them to do. It's a bridge. And so once that comparison was mastered between 2 millimeters and 5 millimeters, they brought it down to 2 millimeters and 4 millimeters, 2 millimeters and 3 millimeters, all that kind of stuff. Then they did the same thing with whiskers, which is interesting because that means that they had to blindfold a sea otter. The head researcher says, I knew that if I tried to do anything Selka wasn't ready for, I was very likely to get bit. So I had to find a way to make wearing the blindfold fun. Once she did that, Selka would interrogate the grids or the panels with her whiskers, and similarly have to identify the difference between these different ridges and ridge widths. So then after all of that, they submerged the whole thing in a pool to see if she could do it underwater. After months, they found that the sea otter could distinguish the 2 millimeter grooved boards from boards ranging from 2.1 to 3 millimeters wide. She could she could recognize the 2 millimeter wide grooves almost instantly if she found them first. If she found the wrong one first, she would move quickly on to the second board. It took her less than 0.2 seconds when using her paw and 0.4 seconds with her whiskers. When they did this same thing with human volunteers, which let's just all imagine that for a second. Same thing with human volunteers. It took them at least 30 times slower to distinguish the difference with touch.
So could they only use human volunteers that had beards?
Good question. I'm pretty sure they just did it with fingers. Yeah. But it made no difference to the sea otter whether the boards were underwater or in open air. And they found that overall, when using her paw, she could tell a difference in a groove of 0.28 millimeters and 0.48 millimeters with her whiskers. When you think about the way sea otters hunt, this is starting to make sense. Their dives only last about 1 to 2 minutes, which means by the time they get down to the bottom, they have almost no time to distinguish what is food and what is not, what has meat in it and what has already been cracked, and bring it back up to then break it open and have a snack. And if you think about what they're eating, bivalves, right? They all have these different kind of grooves on them. So you'd be able to tell different species. And if something was open, it'd be smooth, right? So there would be no grooves. But also you could tell your different species apart based on how thick the grooves are. So sea otters hunting by touch.
That's fascinating. How wonderful. It's how did you study the research how did you study this in the sea otters? Well, I had to get to be really good friends with the sea otter before I could do it.
Probably has the scars to prove it.
Yeah, so they had to, they really had to work with this particular sea otter very closely, create a relationship with the sea otter to even make this understanding possible.
Yeah.
Now, I wonder, I mean, I've seen TV shows about humans with amazing abilities, and there is there was something I saw recently. We turn things on all the time with my son, and there were people with various sensitivities that were special, and they had one person, this young gentleman who has very sensitive touch, so sensitive he's able to, as he's just thumbing along a deck of cards, he can tell different cards apart, whereas to me I cannot, but this kid could thumb through and tell the individual cards apart in a deck of cards and count cards to be able to do magic tricks, pick a card, any card, and put it back in the deck, and he'd know which cards were which because of his sense of touch.
Yikes. Yeah. Well, it's possible that Selka was just a really special otter, but I have a feeling
she's normal, but
probably
it's still an N of 1.
It is an N of 1. So now we have to look further for sure. But I think that is a pretty easy thing to do. There's a lot of rescue otters out there. And this is also something that we can then extrapolate to other animals that hunt underwater, which would be an interesting thing to see.
Right. If you can't see, then you got to be able to have a great sense of touch. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now I would like to move from the cute thing that is actually dangerous to the thing that looks super dangerous, which actually isn't. And that's wasps. So this is the University College of London did a research paper about the PR problem that wasps have. Bees and wasps both are two of humanity's most ecologically and economically important organisms. They're both pollinators. They pollinate flowers. They pollinate crops. Wasps, this is the thing people don't know, also regulate populations of crop pests and insects that are vectors for human disease. So wasps, pretty important animals. But I'm sure most of us here and most of us listening are thinking about wasps and thinking about them ruining picnics, stinging, biting, just being mean. I think there's a meme where people rename animals, right? And so like a cobra was called a danger noodle and stuff like that. And I think the wasp was titled something to the effect of jerk bee. But anyway, that's what this study is all about. The University College London wanted to do an overhaul on the negative image of wasps so that they could work towards protecting the ecological benefits and making sure that people are worried about them. So actually what they did is they surveyed 748 members of the public, pretty good sample size, from 46 countries. 70% of the respondents were from the United Kingdom because, you know, this is from University College London, but still 748 people. They looked at their perceptions of insects, including bees and wasps. The responses found that wasps are universally disliked by the public, most likely due to a low-level interest in nature and a lack of knowledge about wasps' kind of benefits to humans. So the wasps are an unpopular choice of insect for research as well, which is where I think this really gets interesting. They looked at scientific research papers and conference presentations on bees and wasps over the last 37 years and 16 years, respectively. Of the 908 papers sampled, 2.4% were wasp publications. So 97.6% were looking at bees.
Well, that makes sense, though, doesn't it? Like, because bees
Why?
are largely domesticated. I mean, there's like honeybees, which is like people have like husband bees, and so you would think that would make sense, right? I'm surprised it's 2.5%. Most wasps are
Really?
like not around people.
Well, I think that's you're thinking about a particular kind of wasp. So that's kind of what this gets to, right? So they looked at 2,543 conference abstracts on bees and wasps. 81.3% were on bees. But there's actually 67 species of social wasps. Over 75,000 species of wasps are solitary. So there's all sorts of wasps that are out there that are doing all sorts of stuff that you're not even thinking about. There's a few types of bees out there, but wasps are everywhere. And the social wasps are the ones that people think about swarming, biting people, stinging people, right? And so this is where their bad rap comes from. So the idea is here that if you're worried about pollinators, the wasps to this point have been left out of the conversation. And part of that, the hypothesis that is raised from the findings of this research is that it probably has to do with the fact that they're not being researched, and that is a reflection on the fact that people don't know a lot about them, right? And so this is exactly like the shark story that I did last week. It's about a lack of knowledge that fuels fear.
And
right?
also that feeds back into the researchers who, as kids, probably grew up with bad ideas about wasps coming and stinging them at picnics and on the playgrounds. And so why do I want to study wasps? I'm not going to go study wasps. And so researchers don't go on to study it to get more information because they have a bad feeling or bad taste in their mouth.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. I still think it's more because there's like an ag like focus on bees that isn't there on wasps.
I think that's true as well.
So they're saying they think this is related, right? So the reason everybody wants to talk about bees is because nobody wants to talk about wasps. So it's actually a reaction to the fact that there's been all this research on the few species of bees that people think about, but there's thousands of species of wasps that are keeping this planet going, and nobody is researching them.
Keeping this world going, especially those parasitoid wasps that put their babies in the bellies of others. And wasps.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. And then I'll just close out the animal corner since it's getting late with a very quick piece of climatia about spring. So I realize it's almost the autumnal equinox here in the northern hemisphere. But in about 6 months, it'll be springtime. If you're in Australia, it's going to be spring in just next week, I think. But when you're looking at North America, spring is arriving earlier. Now, the equinox is at the same time, but what they're counting as spring is when spring plants and animals arrive and flourish, right? And so this is a U.S. Geological Survey study in from California specifically, and they wanted to look at the migration routes of birds. And they found that overall, the adjustment of the timing of spring, the adjustment of migration is not consistent in each area or in each season. So they compared data on the first appearance of leaves and flowers from 496 national wildlife refuges and 4 major North American bird migratory routes between 1901 and 2012. They found that spring is arriving early in 76% of refuges and extremely early in 49% of those refuges compared to early 20th century. And for 3 of the 4 migration flyways, spring advanced more rapidly at higher latitudes than lower latitudes. There was no latitudinal pattern across the Pacific flyway, though, which covers the west coast of North America, where I am. Hello, where we all are.
Yeah, it's like a east coast, northeast coast.
Yeah, well, part of it is that we have this very particular ocean current system here that's helping slow down some of these effects a little bit for us. Let's hope that continues. But
and largely we don't have seasons. Like I mean,
well, Kiki does up where she is.
Speak for yourself.
Yeah.
We don't have as extreme seasons, I feel like, as the East Coast has.
Yeah, I think Kiki has a pretty good
I got some
winter
good season.
summer.
I'm in fall right now. It's full on fall. It's cool.
Yeah.
We got storms coming through. It's fall. Yeah.
But yeah, the point of this is looking even at just 2 specific species, the blue-winged warbler and the whooping crane. Species breeding sites had advances in spring arrival, so it happened earlier, but wintering sites didn't. So the big problem here is that there is going to be this very sudden imbalance. It's messing with the sync, because there's a certain synchronicity of animals and plants. These animals need to arrive in springtime when there's food available. If the food flowers before they get there, that's a problem. If it flowers at different times every year and they can't figure out when to come back, that's a problem. If the amount of time they're gone changes, that's a problem, because these animals have spent tens, hundreds of thousands of years adjusting and adapting to a particular pattern. And you can't just change it in 50 years and expect evolutionary history to hit fast forward, right? So migratory birds, they have a lot to battle as the seasons move and adjust.
Yeah. There was another, not just spring, but the equator is expanding. That was something I saw.
Oh, yeah. That sounds about right. Yeah.
The equator, not the equator itself, but the equatorial region, which is
the
zone of warmth and kind of constant hot temperatures.
Yeah. Basically the tropics,
expanding.
right?
The tropics are becoming more they're bigger tropics. Expanding.
So they're going to be opening some new resorts in San Diego.
Right. Things are changing. They are changing. I have some quick stories I can run through. Justin, do you have quick stories?
I can go through one. This one is interesting. They did basically a DNA CSI cold case on Ivory, and they went back, sometimes 15, 20 years, testing Ivory. And what they've discovered basically is that they can narrow down the illegal export shipping lanes or ports that are being used to most ivory trade, which is a huge step in sort of cracking down and making something that's been illegal for 30-ish years.
Well, it depends where you are.
Worldwide, worldwide, it's been internationally illegal since.
It's been illegal for it to come into the United States from international sources,
for maybe even longer than that. So this was interesting though, because they could, apparently they don't just. I have not having been in the illegal ivory trade, not knowing how this works. I assume you catch a shipment and it's a tusk, still on intact. Well, apparently that's not how it's done. They break it up into smaller shippable. It might get mailed. It might be a whole bunch that's in a container. on a container ship, but it gets broken down and separated and sort of dispersed this way. And through their DNA testing, they were able to connect, like, oh, this that we picked up here and over there and at that port are all the same elephant, which then sort of backtracks and fills in that network. And they're able to go back a number of years in doing this too. But what's interesting too then is once they do make arrests, they can connect it to a network of crimes that have taken place. So it's kind of nice to know that that there is the forefront of science being employed to help stop this trade. And well, it's at the end of the show. We'll find something to lift you up later. In the time period between 2005 and 2015, it states here that 111,000 elephants were lost simply for their ivory.
Yeah, 96 elephants a day still.
Far too many.
That's not good news. Let's slow that down. I'm glad to hear that this DNA barcoding, that being able to track these, track the ivory genetically, is able to. It's going to start pinpointing the networks, the illegal trade networks, and it will help us get to the people who are in charge of these rings. And
yeah, between this and poacher drones and our spectrometry sets that we can use at ports of call, things are coming along. I'm optimistic.
All right, I'm going to run through my last stories. I got some quick old stories here. Everyone, TESS. TESS is a new spacecraft that is in space. It is also known as Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, NASA's newest planet hunter. It launched this year and is up in the sky, and it has taken its first pictures and sent them back to Earth. So we have the first images of the tests of the camera sensors in its first scientific recordings as it begins expanding on what the Kepler mission has already done. While the Kepler mission was looking far, far away from Earth, some 3,000 to 10,000 light years away from Earth, what the TESS mission is looking at is much closer to home. We're talking about 30 to 300 light years. And I think Kepler's 300 to 3,000 light years away. Sorry, not to 10,000. So Kepler was way out. TESS is closer to home, and it's going to be looking at things, going to be looking for these transiting planets in front of their stars by looking at the light, visible light from planets. Now, this is exciting because it can potentially help us locate exoplanets closer to Earth, right? Habitable exoplanets. And one such possible exoplanet is where Mr. Spock came from.
Planet Vulcan?
Planet Vulcan, right? So Spock, Star Trek fans out there, right? We know Vulcan is the planet from whence came Spock. Well, that planet is based on an actual star that is known as 40 Eridani A, or KIDE. And 40 Eridani A was recently discovered by astronomers to maybe have a super Earth orbiting it. They weren't looking at light signatures. They were looking at gravitational signatures in order to kind of look at the wobble of the star itself. And the wobble was indicative of something orbiting about twice the size of Earth, out some ways from the planet, but within the habitable zone. So this could either be a small Neptune-like planet, gaseous, or it could be a large super Earth planet, rocky, in the habitable zone, around a star that's only about 16 to 17 light years from our planet and is in the range that TESS will be looking at starting in November of this year. We may find Vulcan.
It's pretty exciting.
We may. Well, if it's gaseous, we probably won't. But if it's a rocky planet, that's an interesting little fun thing. I love that one of the Star Trek writers was like, I'm just going to pick this star and put a planet around it. And now astronomers are like, oh, yeah, that star. There's probably a planet around it.
Yes. So we should probably land a spaceship on that planet and walk out just onto the rocks and assume that we can breathe the atmosphere. It'll probably be fine.
Yeah, except it'll be a little harder to walk because there was a greater gravitational force on
M5.
Vulcan.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which is why Vulcans have the extra strength that they do, because their
Exactly.
muscle
There you go.
tissues evolved to be able to do the heavier lifting that's
See,
required.
it
on
all
the
makes
planet.
sense.
It all
And
makes
it's
sense.
why- It's why Spock can hold his breath a really long time, because it's a gaseous planet, and
No, it's not Vulcan wasn't a gaseous planet.
no, but I mean it was at first, but then they fixed it because they're so smart.
Because they're so smart.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this is a case of life imitating art, I guess, in this particular realm.
Gene
couple
may not
more.
have been of this earth. It's just possible. It's just possible.
Couple more quick stutter stories here. Researchers found that synthetic sandalwood, not the real sandalwood that's nice smelling, but synthetic sandalwood, which is actually more often used in hair care and self-grooming products because it's less expensive than the real stuff. They found that it decreases the rate of cell death around the follicles in your head and increases growth factor that is released. So I thought this study was interesting because, number one, we've talked about odorant receptors in our skin on previous episodes that are the receptors that allow us to smell aren't just in our noses, they also are in our skin in various places. And this is the case for this synthetic sandalwood odor. There is an odorant receptor in the hair follicle cells, and synthetic sandalwood stimulates it to grow
So
and not die.
This makes
So
sense
maybe.
because I have both. I love the smell of sandalwood.
That's why you have great hair.
I know. I have sandalwood scented shampoo. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, that's, and I had no idea. I might actually be bald right now, if not for my just happenstance love of the sandalwood scent. I had no idea.
So anyway,
Now
researchers
now I'm afraid that if I
stop.
change shampoos, my hair will fall out because I've been bald for years now. I just didn't know it.
Yeah, you'll never be able to stop with the sandalwood scented shampoos and conditioners at this point. So the researchers now say this is a really interesting direction for inquiry to find out if it is something that could be used as a possible hair loss treatment. On the bad side of things, however, there was a research study that came out suggesting that Prozac influences antibiotic resistance.
What?
Yes, Prozac was found. It was applied to bacteria, and they found that when it was when bacteria were bathed in a bath that contained Prozac, that the bacteria increased their mutational rate. The Prozac fluoxetine, it affected efflux channels, which is these pumps on the membrane of the bacteria that pumps things from the inside to the outside. And those efflux pumps were much more likely to pump antibiotics out of the bacteria if the bacteria were exposed to the Prozac. So it's not antibiotic resistance. It's a bit of resistance through mutations because the mutation rate is increased. But the big effect is that it increases the efflux pumping, just pumping the antibiotics out of the bacteria so they don't have a chance to have an effect.
Yikes. So this is drug interactions. We weren't really
Yeah,
aware
so
of before. So this might be, you know, if you go on antibiotics, you have to consider the ramifications of going off of an antidepressant.
right, because what they're thinking is that Prozac may affect antibiotic resistance within
Yikes.
people's guts. It may affect also this. There's a lot of Prozac that goes through the human body without being fully digested and metabolized and is released into the waterways. It is one of those molecules that does
Oh.
end up in the waterways. And so it probably is having this effect on bacteria in our water supply and also could be affecting other animals and their bacteria. So, yeah.
Yikes.
Yay!
We just can't win.
Can't win
We
on that
don't
one.
we don't want to have clinical depression, and we don't want to have widespread bacterial infection, but we might not be able to have both.
Right. And so, Blair, this last story of mine is just for you.
Oh, good.
Just for you, because it's all about robots and their skin. Researchers at Yale University have developed robotic skin that can be wrapped around anything to turn it into a robot. So, your stuffed animal, wrap it in a robotic skin, turn it into a robot. How about
No.
how about even just making a robot from scratch with a number of thin panels? These robotic skins have actuators embedded into them so that they can create movement of objects that are not normally motion with it
Oh, I
having any
hate
motion.
it. Oh my God.
The best thing about this, I was thinking, these skins can be taken off of something and used for something else. They can be repeatedly used. I love the fact that it can take inanimate objects and turn them into robots with these skins. It's a robot skin for everything to turn it, even you. Maybe
Oh,
you could put the robot skins on your back to help you with your posture.
I can only picture one thing, and that is a small child whose older sibling has acquired these skins
Oh no.
and has turned some of their toys alive. Perhaps while they
no.
slept.
The animals
And
came to
then
life.
they're just scarred forever.
We have that exact stuff somewhere in this house.
I absolutely. I mean, this is research that could, this is the kind of stuff that could be used in lots of environments. It's not highly technical robotics. I mean, if you have the software to apply it and the know-how, it's the kind of thing that could be taken to the International Space Station and used in one application and then taken off and used for another application as needs be. These skins, in that they are flexible, can be adapted to many different uses from, like I said, taking inanimate objects, turning them into animate objects, or even creating robots de novo. So it's a really neat idea developed in the lab of a female roboticist, Rebecca Kramer Bottiglio.
I love the idea. I think it has lots of great applications. I think it should not fall into the hands of the average consumer. That is my opinion.
I love the idea. Your voice is cracking me up.
Nobody freak out on the internet about how I hate technology or anything. Just know that I don't want it to fall into the wrong hands.
Like an older sibling.
Like an older sibling, perhaps. Just hypothetically.
No, or worse, a parent that wants you to have good posture. Oh, that forces
But the
a child
robot's
to-
making me. The robot's making me stand up straight.
I actually thought more like Iron Man. Like
Could be Iron Man. It could be also. You could clamp around your muscles to make you stronger. Right?
ooh,
Yeah, it is
or,
Iron Man.
Or you could. This is it. You could work out anywhere by having the thing create resistance as you move.
Yes.
You could just sit there and like lift weights just by doing this. What are you doing? I'm lifting about 20 pounds right now. which I guess is, I don't know if that's a lot or a little.
I think it's not a lot for a
I've
weightlifter.
never lifted weights. No, forget it. But like you could just have resistance built into this thing. And then now you're talking about therapy.
That's where I was going to
physical
go. Yeah.
therapy that allows people who can't get out and go for the walk to do some in the home movement with the legs or stretches, which could facilitate like being at the gym. Oh, this is going to be awesome, Blair. Don't be scared.
Just don't want it to fall in the wrong hands.
Future is always going to fall into both the right and the wrong hands.
I can't wait
It
until the
always
day
matters.
that I can come over and animate your stuffed animal collection.
No!
That octopus is coming for you.
Why would you do that to me? I had a recurring nightmare as a child with a floating octopus
It would
that
make me
hurt
laugh.
me with its
I'm
brain.
sorry. I'm sorry. All right, everybody. That does it for me.
Weird dream.
Is there anything
More
else
on
we
that
need to cover?
another time.
Another time other than Blair's dreams? Do we have anything else we need to cover?
Good.
All right, everyone. I want to say this does it for another episode of This Week in Science. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to everyone in the chat rooms over at twist.org/live. Hi, you guys, everyone in there, ladies and gentlemen, and also over at YouTube. Thank you for being in our chat room. Thank you for being a part of the conversation we've had tonight. Thank you to Fada for helping to monitor our YouTube chat room and for doing show notes and descriptions and social media. That's amazing. Thank you to the moderators over in our regular chat room. We've got Gord and Ben over there doing that. Identity4, thank you for recording the program. I do appreciate being able to have an audio version of something we call a podcast. That's pretty good there. And for everyone who supports us on Patreon, I would love to say thank you to you. Thank you to Paul Disney, G. Burton Lattimore, Richard Onomus, Ed Dyer, Ken Hayes, Harrison Prather, Charlene Henry, Joshua Fury, Andy Gross, Steve DeBell, Alex Wilson, Tony Steele, Craig Landon, John Ratnaswamy, Mark Mazzaros, Jack, Matthew Litwin, Jason Roberts, Bill K, Bob Calder, Time Jumper 319, Eric Knapp, Richard, Brian Condren, Dave Neighbor, Aiden Jeff, Dave Wilkinson, Ben Bignell, Richard Porter, Jacqueline Boyster, Noodles, Kevin Reardon, Christoph Zuknarek, Noah Zemke, Jim Seabright, Ashish Pants, Ulysses Adkins, Sarah Chavez, Artyom, Rick Ramus, Paul, John McKee, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Christopher Dreyer, Lisa Slazewski, Jim Drapeau, Greg Riley, Sean Lamb, Ben Rothig, Steve Lesseman, Kurt Larson, Rudy Garcia, Marjorie, Gary S., Robert, Greg Briggs, Brendan Minish, Christopher Rappin, Flying Out, Aaron Luthen, Matt Sutter, Mark Hassenflow, Kevin Parachan, Byron Lee, E.O., Mark, Tyrone Fong, and Keith Corsell. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. If you're interested in helping us out through Patreon, you can find information at twist.org. Remember that you can also simply help us out by telling people you know about TWIS, passing the word along. Many thanks to Kathryn Matthews from Oceana for joining us this evening on next week's show. So far, I don't have an interview lined up. It's just us. And we will be broadcasting live online, twist.org/live at 8 p.m. on that Wednesday evening next week. You can join our chat room. You can watch live. But if you don't make it, it's okay. It will be archived on the internet forever. And you'll be able to find past episodes at our YouTube channel and also at twist.org.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is available as a audio podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory. Or if you have a mobile type device, you can look for TWIS, the number 4, Droid app in the Android marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple marketplacey.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes are available on our website. You haven't heard? That's www.twis.org, TWIS.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the hosts or other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, somewhere in the subject line. Otherwise, your email will immediately be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also hit us up on the Twitter, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes during the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything at all from the show, please remember,
It's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. Jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma. Got the eye. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. So how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.
Yo, 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 everyone. What's up? We come to the end of the show. We come to the end of the show. You know, we come to the end of the show. We come to the end of the show. You know, we know, you know, we know, you know. I'm here. Where did everybody go? I don't know. And I'm shrinking. My co-hosts have disappeared. I have to sit on a pillow. Do you guys know that? Nothing's the right height. I haven't said everything. I know I can move things around, but nothing's the right height. It's not where I want it to be, so I have to sit on a pillow. Ooh, the new Doctor Who. I've got Ed and Pam talking about the new Doctor Who in the chat room. Hello, chat room. That's right. I should go for my next career. I'm going to move from science communication into, I don't know, after show hip hop. It's a new genre. After the show. La 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 la. So Katie was great, wasn't she? Ed, so that's the funny thing. Yes, I have a standing desk I can raise and lower. Watch, here comes the desk. It's going up. Whee! I'm not. It comes back down. Got my standing desk. It's motorized. It's awesome. My chair only goes, wait, it just goes short or this tall. And my studio, the way it's set up, if I stand up, you see there are other things you see in the screen that I don't want you to see. So I have to be seated because it's a shorter ceiling than I'd like it to be, and I don't want you seeing my rolls of paper. I'd like you to imagine that I'm just in this room with my backdrop of twissiness. Yeah. So I'm seated now instead of standing. I'm sitting on a pillow because I just haven't set things up correctly. And I'm sitting on a pillow, and the chair at its highest, I can't really reach the floor, so my feet are dangling, and so you see me wiggling all over all the time. It's because I'm slipping off the chair. I'm constantly slipping off the pillow on the chair because I can't reach the floor. Oh, it's a disaster. It's just funny. Oh, Doctor Who, Doctor Who, Doctor Who. Fada has pre-bought the next season of Doctor Who. You're just ready. Oh, bleak. So how are you doing, Justin? You got your Doctor Who phone. You're ready for the next season?
Yep.
Yep.
I'm doing good. I had a fun
Big week.
few days.
Yeah.
I so my new job, I have my new gig is 2 different jobs. One is being an assistant gene bedazzler.
Gene bedazzler. There you go.
Yeah, putting the sequences on the genes. And the other is what I'm starting to think of as a PE coach for microbes. Sort of like the job is to sort of make them go out and run laps and then, see how they did. Right?
Go work out, microbes. How'd you do?
Yeah, it's like a combine. If you're a football fan, where they make them jump, people jump and run and show off what their raw physical potential skills are. And so I did a bit of putting some microbes through paces this week, and I got a very, very nice result. I got a very nice, clear result. So it was a very happy week in Justin's Bubble Lab. There is
Justin's Bubble Lab. That's right. Pipette.
It's sort of like I had spent years like aggressively interacting with people all day as a job, and there is a sort of relief and I don't know what else of the isolation from people, of being in a lab or at a lab bench by yourself or in a room by yourself and working those pipettes or whatever in solitude, right? There is something just beautiful. It's quiet. You don't have to be interacting with people throughout the whole day.
Right.
And I have these moments where like, this is like some sort of therapeutic Zen retreat, not a job. Right? This isn't work. This is like, I get to go here and relax. And then after a while, like, you do interact with a human, but you're totally uncalibrated for human interaction all of a sudden. You're like, words. I've been by myself talking in my head for like all week. And, oh yeah, the weather's great. It's nice when it's outside to be there. And you're like, I have not talked to anybody for a long time. What the heck happened? I used to be able to converse with people in a very casual, normal way, and now I'm like this. It's like I have been living on the moon, and I've just re-entered Earth orbit and am interacting with humans for the first time in years. So it's this weird, like, it happens pretty quick. Like, I did not think that that was a thing that could
it's a thing
that could happen to me, and I would uncalibrate from human interaction. But I've had days where, like, I don't know how word, face, mouth response things work right now. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna leave the room.
Hold on.
Gotta hire something. I was like, what? What is it? No, I don't mean the aggressive one. I mean a different what. The what that just pretend it's the right what that I said. Just humans. It is fun though.
Yeah, I remember my brain slicing and cell counting and all the stuff I did in the lab, and working with my birds, doing I sat in a room with birds, watching them do little behavioral trials for hours on end, not talking to anybody else. Yeah. I swear, to this day, I think I commune with birds. I can talk to birds. The birds talk to me. You know, I'm like, Snow White or whatever.
That was nice. The cell counting gets me pretty quick. The cell counting is one thing that does, after being in that zone and a completely different visual immersion, it's like a virtual reality sort of thing. Almost.
Well, are you looking at a computer screen?
No. I've got the hemocytometer and a microscope.
Okay. Microscope. Yeah. Because that's like you're really focusing in and your eyes kind of get focused in the microscope lenses. And you're
in microscope vision land. Yeah. And then you're also like the only interaction that tells you that there's an outside world is every once in a while these giant spiders show up, which are your eyelashes because you got a little too close. Right?
Spiders. No, not spiders.
But that one, I don't know. Like, I would love, actually, it'd be a fun experiment to get on some sort of brainwave monitor and some of these different activities, because that one puts me in I think like that's a state that I would be most susceptible to some form of hypnosis or something, because after coming out of a long time of cell counting, I feel like I'm on a completely different brainwave frequency than I normally encounter. And it's not just the one where like you're just uncalibrated with humans, but it's really strange. It's like an immersive event for me.
It is immersive. Yeah. I get it. I've been there. I get it.
It's probably not that different from people who work on an assembly line. It's just kind of like a repetitive task, right? So like if you're doing a thing that creates a pattern in brain function and brain demand, it might create kind of this cycle that is almost kind of meditative in what your brain's doing. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the one with the cell counting though is I think it's like I don't know, but it's like an immersive virtual world, because it's not like, I think it would be a little bit different if it was a physical thing. Like if my body was still like,
maybe
like I was still connected to this world and this thing. But I'm traveling through a world that's just made up of cells and squares.
Yeah, I wonder if it's similar brain processes is just what I'm wondering. Like, today I spent 3 hours clicking here, reading a thing, clicking here, reading a thing, clicking here. And it was just, the time moved quickly, but also it was a couple of times someone walked up to me or called my name and asked a question, and I like didn't respond right away because I was kind of in this brain pattern of repetitive thought or repetitive motion or whatever it is that I mean, maybe a computer screen and a microscope lens kind of are similar in that way, that it's an area of focus. I don't know.
What I find is interesting though is it is, I mean, I've had that focus where you can't speak, like that what Justin started with was just being in the lab and you come out and you haven't spoken to anybody for so long and it's that I can't talk, can't what. And I've had that myself. I have it all the time. I work at home alone. So if you guys actually, I try and spend Wednesday afternoon having conversations with people so that by the time we get to the show, I'm fine.
Right.
But I'm not usually.
That's my other major thing is though, that's I leave not talking to anybody all day and then go hang out with children who want to be on devices. Anyway,
no.
Yeah, there is this sort of pattern that you can get caught into where like I'm not part of my society right now.
But what's interesting, but the thing that's interesting though is that like all day long you're like talking to yourself in your head, right? You're having your own thoughts, your own conversations that are taking place in, the language you learned growing up most likely. But then the vocal centers are shut down when it comes to, there's like a disconnect between the like listening to other people or responding, the behavioral stuff to respond to other people. You've got it all worked out fine inside your head, but there's some disconnect. You've lost something in the way that your brain is able to reconnect with people outside of you.
And for me, I don't notice it at all until I speak. And I realize
I know, right? That was not normal.
That's a weird. It's a weird tone of voice, or was I too loud, or maybe I was too quiet? Somebody says, "Hey, how you doing?" You're like,
"Oh, yeah, it's okay. I got it." Either that or you're way too loud. Sierra 1. What?
No. Don't even say it.
That's why it's so hard to open my eyes in the morning. Oh my God.
Speaking of
It
that.
is a late night. It is a late night. Yes. Giant spiders sew your eyelids shut every night. Yeah.
Yes, they do. And mine are coming soon.
The spiders come out at night.
They do.
And they drop in your mouth while you're sleeping with
your
mouth
open.
Oh, speaking of,
I love you, Blair.
Speaking of Blair, how was the week? I saw like you posted some pictures.
Blair had her day of color.
I did.
Yes.
I took some videos. Those are coming out soon, hopefully.
I have received the package.
Yeah, I'm not well skilled in the video editing system, but also just watching and listening to myself over and over in that way, being very vulnerable already made me uncomfortable when I just looked at them. So I was like, I can't.
Yeah, that's tough. I've done. I still should be doing more. I don't know what's wrong with me. I did a whole lot of audio editing, and like Kiki was one of my victims for my radio play, and I could edit Kiki all day. Like it doesn't faze me at all, right? All the other people who played parts in the thing, I could edit all that. Whenever it came to like editing and having to listen to my own voice in little loops and repetitive and picking which version of the take to use, entirely irritating. It was, yeah.
I thought you were going to say the opposite. I couldn't figure out which takes to choose because they were all amazing.
They were all good.
They were perfect.
It's weird. Like I can do that very like I can be, have an opinion of 3 different Kiki takes that I like. Like, this is the one I like this way she did it here, blah, blah, blah. And in my own, it's sort of like also like why you're not supposed to edit your own writing if you make a book, why they have editors or proofreaders or people who go through and do this sort of stuff. Is because you can't read your own writing, and I don't think you can hear your own talking either. I think you paraphrase and want to write over in real time another version of it. So it becomes very difficult to actually experience it objectively.
Yeah. So anyway, there are videos, but I couldn't. I watched them once, and I was like, nope. Cannot. Here you go, Kiki.
Yeah, and so I will probably take the longer video that we did last week, and then those, and I'm gonna chop, 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 cut, 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 chop, chop,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna make a short video.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'll try and cut it. I'm gonna try and cut it down to, I don't know, under 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes for the whole thing.
Yeah. It was pretty cool. I haven't used them a lot since because they are really distracting still. So I can't drive with them yet. I wore them for like a 5-minute drive in the passenger seat at one point and flipped out over the very brightness of a traffic light. So I'm really glad I haven't been wearing them while driving.
I am too.
Yeah, so that's been part of it. I did put my glasses on for a second today to like look at something in the office that I wasn't sure about what colors they were, and it helped. The indoor ones, but I still have to walk around the zoo with the outdoor ones. We'll see. I've been bringing them around with me just so I can use them when the opportunity strikes, but yeah, I'm using them a little bit here and there so far.
Good.
I also kind of like that the novelty of them hasn't gone away yet. So that's part of why I'm still using them sparingly. It's still really nice to put them on and go like, oh my God.
Right, because then the fear is that if the novelty did become the normal, right, then when you take them off,
yeah, then everything looks
them,
terrible.
I wish I forgot them at home and I'm watching a movie and I can't even see all the colors in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Although the main like obstacle that I've come across so far is that even the indoor glasses, it's a tiny bit darker than just, normal. So if it's low light, if it's nighttime, anything like that, it does make visibility a little bit harder. And I almost feel like it might be canceling out the benefit to some extent because it's darker, so it's hard to tell colors anyway. So
which makes sense.
Yeah. But during the day, during the day they're really, really effective. The sunglasses are 10 times more effective than the indoor glasses.
Wow.
It was just.
Oh, now I cannot wait to see this video.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
It's crazy talk.
It was absolutely insane. Like, it really was like things were shouting at me.
In color.
Mm-hmm.
In living color. Yeah. In living color.
Wait, is that the TV show or the band? I always get confused.
The TV show that J-Lo was a dancer on.
Was she really? I did not know this.
Yes, she was one of the dancers on In Living Color.
I had no idea.
Before she had her big break. J-Lo.
Jenny from the block.
That's right.
Yeah.
Jenny from the block. Yes. Wall Street Tech. You're welcome. We try to speak presentably and normally for the show.
What?
He said, Wall Street Tech said, "Thank you all for speaking very presentable and normal." We try.
Yeah, it was an off show.
Normal. Is our status quo? Is that a thing? No.
If it wasn't, if it wasn't, if the minimum wasn't good enough, they wouldn't call it the minimum.
There you go.
Yeah. So Dave Shorty, he says there's less light getting to your eye, which is true. So it is darker, but brighter. It is dark because there's sunglasses, so they're shading it, reducing the amount of light. But because of the filtering,
okay,
the
so
light.
that's one possibility, Kiki.
Hmm?
The other possibility is that Blair has been living in low light all this time because what difference does it make?
Life. Look at that snake.
Yeah,
is that
it's
new
my
art?
Put it back up. I
My
couldn't see that.
latest.
Oh, that's
Did you
nice.
do this art with the glasses?
So what I've been doing is I've been selecting my palette
Color
with the glasses
selection.
on. Yeah, and then I can go from there.
That's
it's
interesting.
easier for me to do like very fine detail without them on, but having them on to pick my colors and like group them on the table has been pretty cool.
Huh. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
So I have a question. So when we first did the unboxing and we tried them on, it was like 10 minutes before the brain started to pick up the new signals. How is it? Is there still a lag time, or is it now more instantaneous when you put them on?
There's still it's different for different groups of colors. So with the indoor glasses, probably because they are red lenses, the reds and pinks are pretty instantaneous.
Okay.
The greens and browns, it's gotten down to probably like 5 minutes. Like I had them on today to look at something in my office, and then about 5 minutes later, I turned to my coworker and I was like, "Oh, your sweater's green." And she goes, "Yeah, what do you think it was?" I was like, "Oh, I thought it was gray." So I mean, yeah, so I think the lag time is getting shorter. The sunglasses greens were immediate.
Okay.
Yeah.
The greens were instantaneous, and it was mainly the grass. I was tripping out so hard on grass, you guys.
Oh my god.
So hard. No, the grass was, yeah, it was like, it looked radioactive to me.
That's amazing.
It was bombarding my senses. So that was almost instant. And then as I walked through, I started noticing that tree bark, different trees had different colors of bark. And then I started seeing that there were a bunch of different greens in the trees. And I started seeing different flowers and stuff like that. So the rest of it was kind of gradual. I wore them for about 3 hours in the botanical garden.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So they were really
San
working.
Francisco Botanical Garden. That's a beautiful
amazing.
spot.
And it was
lots to look at.
Bright, sunny day. I was so worried that we were going to have to drive to the North Bay or the East Bay or something to find sun, but the universe really provided me with a perfect cloud-free sunny day.
I think that's lovely. Yeah. That's awesome. Yes.
Now I know this hasn't been a week, right? So, but have you let your pops try them on?
No, I haven't seen him yet.
Okay.
But that's a good question.
I think
he's just gonna say like, "Oh, well, normal people have heightened color reception too, so it's fine.
Yeah. But that would be kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how you should do. This is how you should. Hey, pops. By the way, I understand that this can give heightened color perception to people with color vision who have perfect color vision. Could you test this for me? It takes about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's how to do it.
Well,
Pops,
so
listening, I'm sorry I gave up the game, but that's
Yeah, I bet he's in bed by now. But yeah, so for a while I was wearing the sunglasses and Brian was wearing the indoor glasses as we were walking around. And he was saying that it definitely did make the contrast brighter between colors for him too, but that they weren't really true to what he was seeing, right? So he was saying that, you know, a pink flower was looking, you know, hot pink instead of just pink or whatever it was.
Okay.
And then
But that was him just putting them
Right.
on and
Right.
like not having his eyes adjust to them at all.
Yes, but also that makes me wonder if he just experienced the difference between color blindness and normal color vision in the contrast between the two versions of what he saw, right? So that's possible. I don't know. It's impossible to know what you see and what I see.
So
and
it's
all this
not
stuff.
impossible. So there was this thing at the Discovery, the old Discovery. I don't know if it's at the new Discovery, but I remember it being at the old Discovery. And it was some sort of a color wheel. And there would be and you could move it and you could pick a color and one of the colors would be lit on one side. And then you'd have to pick on the other wheel and point to the color that matched the lit one. I'm sort of messing this up. This is
Wait,
vague memory.
Exploratorium?
Yeah,
Bay Area
I'm
Discovery
sorry.
Museum?
Did I say
Okay, yeah.
Discovery? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exploratorium.
Exploratorium.
So it's a color wheel. You can turn the wheel and you can have it land on a color, and then you can match up another wheel with that color that's backlit. And what was interesting was that me and the person I was with both picked the color next to each other. So we were off by like one shade. It was like this was like a bluish green, and we had a slightly different bluish green. I was 100% that my two colors matched perfectly. They were 100% that their two colors matched perfectly. We weren't too far off. Just one move on this color wheel away from each other, but neither could be convinced that the other was right. The other one obviously had flawed eyes. So within what we call normal vision, there are obviously variations between humans and how we perceive these colors. So what he's calling unreal compared to his normal vision is just. But to say, that color ability, that vision that he has, that pink might be the pink that somebody sees without those glasses.
Yeah.
And as Dave Shorty is saying in the chat, color is contextual. And if you look at white balance, and you'll see it as white, be it blue or yellow, which happens all the time. Yeah, color balance is white balance. It's all. I'm always like, that's white. No, it's not white. The other colors around it are affecting the way I'm seeing it.
If you get it wrong, the reds go magenta.
That's right.
Yeah. I know. I wish that I could take the dot color test with these glasses on, but they say specifically that that's not what they're for. So I won't be able to do it before and after.
What dot color test are you talking
about? The color vision test that has.
Why wouldn't you take the test? You haven't tried it already?
Well,
I'd be like, I got it now. They say not to take it for a government job. No, they specifically say don't use these in order to become an Air Force pilot or to like.
Justin, who read the pamphlet? The pamphlet said,
"Get the pamphlet.
Do not use these to take color blindness tests. It won't work."
No, it doesn't. Didn't say that it wouldn't work. It didn't say it wouldn't work.
Yes, it did.
No, it didn't.
Oh my god.
It didn't say it wouldn't work.
Yikes.
That's not why they were telling you not to. They're telling you that because there's jobs that you're not supposed to have if you're colorblind. And this is not a way to get past the screening for those jobs. Justin has a photographic memory. If I'm right. Otherwise,
I'm watching videos of J-Lo as a fly girl on In Living Color.
Enchromo glasses are not designed to pass color blindness tests.
No,
Keep
they are
reading.
not designed to pass them. No.
Yeah.
Keep reading.
No, that's all it says.
No, that's not all it says.
Yeah.
Here, pull up an online test. See if you can pass it.
Well, I can't because it's too dark in here.
Okay.
I can try it during the day, but
Try
I
it
don't
during
think
the-
it'll work
No,
because
it
that's
will-
not what they do. They don't allow you to. I don't think that's how they work.
Listen,
It's about like
it is how they work, and I can tell you already because you can see all the reds now. You didn't realize there were so many reds. That's all the color test is. It's a bunch of dots that are just different reds. And yeah, if you can't distinguish between the reds, it hides the number that's hunting in or that's in there, hiding in there. But if you can tell the difference and contrast between the reds, it'll pop out. I think the whole point of that, not using it to pass the test, isn't for that test. It's for like a government screening test. Like if you're colorblind, you cannot be a pilot in the Air Force. That's, I think, the test they're talking about.
that was a separate disclaimer in there.
Right. And so I think this is the bullet point to that larger disclaimer. It doesn't mean that this won't work on the dot test. Although it would be interesting to know why, aside from the balloons, they wouldn't put the dot test in there, because that seems like that would be a fun thing. Like,
Yeah,
you can find
that's
that. But I think they're probably under some sort of legal obligation to disclaimer that, so they don't get sued by the Air Force or air traffic control or train engineers or whoever.
I assumed the first iteration of this to consumers, people got the glasses and said, "Oh, it doesn't work," because they were trying to pass
Trying
those
to-
tests.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's because
don't
the
we ask
government legally discriminates against colorblind people because there's jobs that are important that have a entire construct of colors that determine whether or not somebody can safely navigate the job. That's what I'm sure it is. I'm sure nobody's sued because they couldn't pass the dot
I
test.
didn't say sue,
or whatever,
but like, they could ask for their money back because
Yeah, but
it does have 100% money back guarantee.
right. Look, you will pass. I am predicting, can I still do a prediction? So we'll wait in the air. I am predicting that Blair Bazdarich will pass the color dot test the first time you try.
I don't think so.
If it works,
I don't think so either.
if it works, and I guarantee it'll work, I'm going to make you a diploma.
He guarantees.
You have graduated the color school.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can do it. Maybe next week.
Oh, a story that I totally forgot about this week that I had tagged last week is that they found that the eye has a special mechanism for night vision. Where I gotta find this? Where? There's a new.
I did see the headline for that.
Yeah. Eyes have a natural version of night vision. Here it is, out of Duke University. That's what it is. So
I get like eyes adjusting to the darkness.
Yeah, so eyes adjust to the dark
light, and immediately it's pitched into blackness. But then if you wait a little while, you start to be able to pick out the outlines of some stuff in a room or what have you.
But that's just that's habituation to the signal. That's just the cells themselves habituating to less light. I'm not. And so what they found is that there are neurons. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna read this out loud because I haven't looked at it since last week, and so I don't remember. So the retina of the eye changes the software and the hardware of its light sensing cells to create a kind of night vision. Retinal circuits that were thought to be unchanging and programmed for specific tasks are adaptable to different light conditions. Even, the retinas of vertebrates have 4 kinds of motion sensitive cells. So these are retinal cells in the eye, have 4 kinds of motion sensitive cells, each specifically responsive to a motion that is up, down, right or left. And so when an object is moving in those directions, the light is going to change across the neurons, and those population of neurons will fire strongly. However, if the motion is halfway between up and left, both populations of cells will fire, but not quite as strongly. And so then the brain interprets that medium kind of signal as motion going in a diagonal direction, both up and left. And so for complex tasks, the brain uses large populations of neurons because there's only so much a single neuron can accomplish. Directional neurons account for about 4% of the cells that send signals from the retina to the brain. And in rodents, it's more like 20 to 30% because they're prey species and they also are nocturnal. So it's good for them to be able to see in the dark. So they looked at mouse retinas, not human retinas, but they looked at them, put them on an electrode array, and that can measure the firing of hundreds of neurons at once. And then they showed it movies. And when there was less light available in the dark, a weak signal of motion from the up neurons coupled with a weak signal from any of the other directional cells can help the brain sense movement, similar to the way it interprets two signals as being a motion that is something in between. And let's see. For some reasons that aren't yet clear, it's only the up cells that become motion generalists in low light. And so that's pretty much what they found. These up cells they react to everything. They react to every kind of motion. And so basically what it means is that they've learned large populations of retinal neurons can adapt their function to compensate for different light conditions. So the circuitry, the cells react. Yeah, they didn't know that the retinal cells did that before.
Yeah, it's so weird that humans don't see in the dark.
Well, yeah, we can't see in the dark. We need a little bit. You need a bit of light to make the retina work, right? But it's neat that there is this adaptation. Yeah. But people, 4% of the cells are these motion detecting cells, and so this is why we're really not good at seeing things move in the dark. We don't have a lot of these up cells that are going to be adapting and changing their behavior and allowing us to see something move. Whereas like a mouse or other rodent is going to be like, oh my gosh, something moved. Maybe doesn't matter what direction it moved, but they'll be more reactive to something moving in the dark.
Humans were for a long time, I'm sure, active at night or staying up at night looking for stars if there were
There's
stars.
not a lot of nocturnal primates.
No, there aren't.
Humans.
Yeah.
Just humans.
There's really, I think, only nocturnal prosimians, nocturnal lemurs and bush babies and stuff like that. I don't think there are any nocturnal primates.
They have giant eyes, don't they? The nocturnal ones?
Yeah.
How great is the brain though? How great is it to have a brain? But I mean,
it's amazing.
So this is the brain being able to interpret these signals. Just a little bit of motion.
Yeah, just slow loris, eyes, bush babies, Indri, that's another kind of lemury thing.
There's a few.
They're all prosimians though. They're like ancient relatives to monkeys, but not even monkeys.
Not even a monkey. So
there's a night monkey.
So for you,
so there is one nocturnal monkey called the night monkey.
That's how unusual it is. It got the name night monkey. Is how unusual that is.
Yeah.
A night monkey only comes out at night.
It looks like a squirrel monkey, but a little different.
I love the fact that your brain can see colors, Blair. I love the fact that the brain was like, oh, hey, we got a new signal coming in.
Yeah.
Let's route it. It's got an address on it.
Well, that's why it takes a while. Is it's like,
Well, it took a while, but
what is this new information?
But it's so amazing for a human being of still a tender young age as you are, but being on the planet for a decent amount of time without color vision, for the brain to take that input and do something with it properly. Like that's our brain is the plasticity, the flexibility of being able to take on this information.
Yeah.
That's a pretty powerful thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So in the chat room, who is it who shared this link? Growly Bear has shared a link to a video on YouTube that was released by Today I Found Out. And it's all about whether or not people who are colorblind can see more colors when they take LSD and other hallucinogens. And it appears that some people can. So if you ever wanted to stop wearing the glasses, you could just take hallucinogenic drugs.
Okay. Sure. Let me just step on those real quick. Crush them.
It's interesting, though. It's an interesting
problem solved. This is why I'm on LSD today, boss.
I'm on LSD because I want to see in living color. In living color.
I got a note from my doctor. So you're being loud on top of it. You're being very frowny right now. Is that a thing you do all the time? Because I feel like you just reserve it for us here at work, the humans you interact with.
So in this video, they have some quotes from people talking about their LSD experiences. This one person says, "I am not at the extreme end of the color blindness scale, not quite monochrome, but close enough for me to misinterpret all but the most vivid of colors. Yet under the influence of LSD, my color perceptions began to heighten. At first, I put this down to mere visual hallucinations, but steadily I began to notice for the first time a difference in appearance between the leaves of a tree and its bark. Attempting to study this difference was at first difficult, due to the fact that the leaves were constantly changing into birds' faces, cakes, kites, etc."
Whoa, what were you?
Oh.
You were doing something a little more than just the average dose of the L. That's not.
Yikes.
It's funny.
Oh, no.
You're yawning a lot. Why don't you say goodnight, Blair?
It's 11.
Good night, Blair. Say good night,
I need to go upstairs.
Good night, Justin.
Good night, Kiki.
Good night, everyone. We'll be back again next week. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of This Week in Science and our after show. Have a wonderful week. I hope everyone sciences the heck out of it. I'll talk to you next week.